Too, Alan?
Seen that one.
That's it, very
Okay, team. Welcome to the full council meeting of the 22nd of August, and we're an hour earlier than usual. So nice to see everybody here, full team. I can't remember the last time we had it here. There must be something on the food line, Alan, that you're here.
Good to see you too, Your Worship.
Yeah. You ratbag. All right, just work through a few things that open up as we open up the meeting. We're obviously live streaming, so welcome to those that are watching on live stream. Welcome to Michael, who's here today. Obviously, no apologies and no declarations of interest unless somebody wants to put their hand up. Are you telling us anything, Steve, that we should know about?
Enough it comes up.
Yeah. Or about your singing voice over the weekend?
Oh, did you stay for the singing?
Oh, I was there.
Oh, I was
Got roped.
impressed, to be honest. So I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
You made me slightly nervous.
What? Did you get shanghaied for that?
What's that?
Did you get shanghaied for singing? Did you know you were going to sing?
We had a quick run through.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay.
Very fast.
So we've got nothing in the public forum today. And we have one major item that comes in, which is the amendment to the government statement, which is in the tail end of the agenda. If somebody would like to move that comes in.
I'll move that way.
Thank you, Leslie and Darren. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. So we've got a series of minutes that we need to initially just work our way through. So the first one on the agenda is the minutes of the meeting of Great South Joint Shareholders, and all we're doing is acknowledging that's incoming, given that I'm the only one that was on that group that came through. So somebody would like to move that we accept those. Barry, thank you. Leslie, any discussion or any issues around that? There being none, all those in favour of receiving those?
Aye.
Carried, thank you. The minutes of the council meeting held on the 18th of July.
Move.
Thank you.
Second.
A second, thank you. Any discussion around those? There being none, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the meeting of Risk and Assurance Committee held on the 18th of July.
Move that way.
Thank you.
Second.
Got the grant. And just as an issue for me, in that report, it does make reference on page 28 of our board books to a review of performance of the committee, which is the Risk and Assurance Committee, was withdrawn. And my memory is fading a little bit, and I can't quite understand why we withdrew that. If somebody can help. Can you recall?
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
I think Mr. Day is going to answer that one.
Yep. He is.
Yes, thank you.
That was very swiftly passed.
Yeah, through to yourself, Mayor. The chair of the committee didn't have time to prepare the report in the timeline and requested that we have it deferred until the next meeting.
Yep.
So plans on bringing that to the next meeting.
Okay. Yeah, because that was one of the issues I think we'd collectively raised before, was the volume of work that was going through that committee was quite large, and whether there was some way that we could shorten that list of work down a little bit. So that's fine. Any other questions in relation to those minutes? No, there being none, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Oh, sorry, my mistake. There was a recommendation from the Risk and Assurance Committee.
Move that as part of my moving.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. Not you this time, Darren?
No, it was Grant.
Oh, Grant.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there is the one recommendation, isn't there?
It's the two.
Oh, sorry, the two, which was involved the audit proposal and fees. And for those that were there at the time, we had quite a bit of discussion about those, and certainly, I guess, the eye-watering amount that those fees have gone up to now, and will potentially track up again in the future. So, quite a bit of discussion with the auditors. You can see Patricia at the background smiling there. So, if somebody would like to, quite happy to move those two, we'll move those recommendations as well. Thank you, Leslie. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Okay, for the minutes of the Infrastructure Committee held on the 1st of August.
Yeah, I'll move that.
Randy, thank you. Yeah, Peter, thank you. Any discussion in relation to those minutes? There being none, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the meeting of the Bluff Community Board held on the 7th of August.
Yeah, I can move.
Yeah, Grant, thank you, and Barry. Any discussion in relation to those?
I'll just go ahead.
Yep, sorry,
You go.
Grant, you go
I'll
first.
just make a comment about it. It was really good to have Southport at that meeting,
Okay,
and they gave us a very thorough update, which is included in the minutes, just around where the port's at, and it was an opportunity also for the community to engage. And I think it's been a wee while since I've been there, so
yep,
I think it's worth noting that Southport, really reached out and engaged with the community again, which is great. So
sure. I noticed in the minutes here, it did make mention of the Oyster Festival was well attended. And unless I've missed something, I wasn't quite sure what that meant.
oh, we had a great time.
So the community board had a good feed of oysters. Is that what you're saying? Is that a typo, or did they actually have an oyster
No,
festival?
they haven't. No, they
They haven't. No, I didn't think so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll note that and get it corrected at the time it goes to the Bluff Community Board for confirmation.
Yeah, I thought I'd missed on something. Yeah, Barry, you had something. Oh, sorry, Peter.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, there was one omission there for the attendees. Lindsay Beer for the Bluff Promotions did attend that meeting, and it's mentioned later on where he made a report. So his name is not on the list.
Okay.
So just something minor, but
Yep.
has to be corrected.
That's all good.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion on those minutes? No, being none, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the Community Wellbeing Committee held on the 8th of August.
Move they receive.
Thanks, Darren. Trish, thank you. Any discussion around those?
Yeah, I've just got one.
Sure.
My name mentioned a couple of times in there, and it's Stuart is
Spelt the wrong way.
STU.
Yep.
I've seen it a few times.
I was going to raise that before Leslie jumped the gun and beat me to it. But yeah, it's spelled the wrong way.
Apologies for that, Councillor. We will correct that. As I'm sure you appreciate, Malavika has been seconded, and so the rest of my team are getting used to life in our committee. So my apologies.
Yep. Okay. Oh, sorry, Grant. Yes.
Yeah, just we had a good discussion around the trees, and I think Barry raised it particularly around the Mitre 10 thing, and been driving down there a wee bit lately, and I think it was a really valid point that we need to lean into a bit more around just the danger those trees potentially present to our community.
Yep.
And if we're in very drying weather and then we get a wet period, it softens the ground, and
Yep.
there's significant risk on the other side of that road, and through that road is a main arterial route. So I think that should be raised through audit and risk potentially, or somewhere we can
Probably
get a better seal.
Michael's got his ear to that issue.
So
Michael to my
can I
right.
Speak to it.
Sure. Yeah.
Because we were actually just discussing master plans and management plans, but it was noted by the staff, and they will come back to us with
Yep.
an update on what's going on with the trees. So that should be at the next, hopefully the next community.
Come through your committee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever we're calling it this week,
Yeah.
till I change it.
Cool.
Barry first.
Yeah, there's also a group of trees on Don and Queen's Drive. A couple of them are already leaning.
Same
over.
town belt.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're already leaning over a couple of them. Hate them to come down on someone.
Yep. Well, it'd be a bit obvious if it came down on Tom's truck again, wouldn't it?
I've had my time, sure.
Yeah, you do. Peter.
Yeah, Barry mentioned what I was going to mention. He mentioned about Don and Queen's Drive. A couple of people that walk their dogs around there. They made comment to me about it, so I said that we are well aware of that.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yep. So, any further discussion? Oh, sorry.
Through yourself, Chair. Just want to highlight we have got all of those trees within the dangerous trees plan. They are on the list to be investigated and brought back through that committee, so they are on the list.
Thanks, mate.
Any further discussion? No, being none. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. So we've got the minutes of the Finance and Project Committee held on the 15th of August. Grant, got you there.
Second those.
Leslie, thank you. And we have a recommendation there as well. So that is in relation to a draft financial risk management policy for adoption of council as presented.
Yeah,
Yep,
I'm happy to
so
move that.
both mover and seconder are okay with that. Any discussion around that? No, there being none.
No.
Oh, sorry, Ringy.
Thank you, Chair. Look, just in paragraph 5, it refers at the bottom to a point I made about CCTV, whether it should be on the dashboard for projects. And the notation there was that we may need additional dashboards. It's one of these key projects. So I just wonder where we are going with that. Will that become a dashboard item rather than sitting in the sort of bowels of infrastructure?
Did Michael have a go at that?
Through yourself, Chair. Look, I can confirm we are working on a full project dashboard to go back through finance and projects. We currently only have the strategic projects that go through our project management office. So they have, most of those are the roadmap projects. There are a few exceptions to that which have been added to their bandwidth. But however, the CCTV, for an example, was a very, like a number of projects, is very interesting for a council perspective, and we want to get that up. But we're working on getting you a full capital project list so you can actually see them all, not in just one in isolation going forward.
So would we see that, say, in a month's time on the next, or sorry, every 2 months, sorry for that one? About October or something?
So, Chair, I highlighted at the last, we've got a resource gap in that spot, and we're trying to work through that. I will work with the team to see if there's an option of getting you a list to the next meeting, but...
So the reason I raise this is that it's not just pipes and footpaths and stuff. There's a lot of public interest in this, and so it shows, the dashboard thing is actually quite good, because as highlighted in the June infrastructure meeting, it's got critical stage points, and we need to know that, we're sort of on track.
Might hand that one over to my GM infrastructure there.
Yeah, it's one of those visible things.
Thank you. Through the chair. Absolutely, we've taken note of that feedback that we received at the last finance and projects meeting about wanting a broader view. I'm conscious of not wanting to bombard council with every metre of, curb and channel renewal, and wanting to keep it to those things that are likely to have community interest. What I'm working with my team on, and we are hoping to pull it together for the next infrastructure committee meeting at this stage, and Michael and I might just have to figure out if that's the right place for it to go, but is to the full list of Three Waters renewals, as well as those key projects that we think would be of particular interest to council, particularly the CCTV project, the alternative water supply project, and what's happening with Esk Street West are the ones that we've got on our radar at the moment. So we've set ourselves the challenge of trying to get that to the next infrastructure committee meeting, conscious that reporting will have to go through ELT next week. So we're hoping to make that, but otherwise it will be coming shortly behind.
Yeah, right. Rangi, you raise a good point. Because I think, from my interpretation of where things should go, I would have thought that the grants committee, which is finance and project, should pick up the likes of CCTV, even though it's an infrastructure issue. To me, often infrastructure is a bit of a business as usual type thing, as Aaron says. And I think in relation to the CCTV, we've lost a bit of traction there. Community were told that we'd have this up and running by the last quarter of this year, and I assumed to most lay people that means the calendar year, not the financial year.
I mean, if you wanted to spread it, you've got community well-being, and this is actually what CCTV is potentially supposed to be. Yeah. Community well-being. So you're chucking in Darren's one.
Yeah. Well, we just need to get it somewhere where we can keep track of it, because people are asking us, when is it coming? We're getting it from the CBD retailers. We're getting it from the ICL. We're getting it from lots of other places around town that know that this is coming and are wanting to know when we'll deliver it. So, yep. Aaron.
The only piece I'd add to that is absolutely agree with the visibility. I think one of the pieces we just want to keep in our thought process is which meetings we already have key staff at, in terms of if we've already got staff who regularly attend the infrastructure committee meeting. Ideally, we wouldn't really want to have them then spend here for the whole of finance and projects and here for the whole of community wellbeing. So it's trying to figure out also from a staffing perspective where the best fit is as well.
Okay, thank you. Right.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Look, I don't think it's a matter of where they are. The point of the initial discussion was we're making decisions, and CCTV was one, and East Street West, and yet we lose visibility of what's happening next, and they're not. And I think there's a reference in the minutes here where they're not projects. We're not asking them to be projects and then put on the list. We just want to know, okay, we've made a decision. Now where we're at in the process? Are we going out for consultation? Are we waiting for design concepts? Whatever we're at, so we can see the progress. Because as Councillor Pottinger rightly points out, our community is actively watching these things and want them delivered. So we're accountable to the community.
Yep, and you're quite right. We're galloping with S Street West towards the opening of the hotel. It's coming around quick. Yeah. And we've got a significant amount of work to do there, which will involve public consultation as well.
Yeah.
Leslie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to point out at this juncture, because there's been a lot of talk about the CCTV project, that council took the original decision to use a councillor portfolio system to appoint former councillor Scout and myself to the CCTV project, and it may be as part of keeping the project and updates on track that we want to use a similar appointment of a couple of councillors to specifically steer that project through the rest of its coming into being. In fact, I am still technically an appointee for the CCTV project.
Yep. Okay. So this is your chance, Ria.
I'm happy to be on that, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Well, I think you raise a good point, Leslie, that unless we have governance pushing this along, we've got our staff under pressure in lots of areas, including the museum. It's very easy for us to have a bit of slippage, which is not a criticism of them. It's just we've got to keep to the front of some of these issues. So,
yeah, and as I said,
are you still happy to be on that group?
The way to do that was to appoint two councillors to steer it through the initial.
You've got Ria to start with. Are you still interested in being on that?
Yes, I'd still be interested.
Sure, that's cool. Okay, so I think Aaron hears that. We don't need to move them.
I was more than pleased to go on it myself.
Oh, sorry, Ringy. Yes.
Look, the reason I would like some urgency on this is that last week during the Finance Committee, I actually sent an email to senior staff asking a very critical question about the CCTV and a certain point of a decision process that would take part, and I've not heard a response from that.
Yep.
Now, it wasn't a difficult question, but if I'm not getting responses, I feel like everything's getting put in a drawer somewhere. So, yeah, I just want to highlight that I am a bit worried, actually.
Yep. I think that's it. Yeah, I'm getting a whole lot of people. Tom, I see you over there, Aaron.
My turn.
Yep.
Look, I mean, I think all projects, certainly all significant projects, should be channeled through the Project and Finance Committee, and that should be the governance group that, that watches as that goes through and drives it through. Obviously, there could be subcommittees of that which take a particular accountability, and maybe I don't know if that's what Leslie's referring to, but I don't think we should be creating groups outside of the committee set up, and I think having the discipline of saying that all projects should be channeled through the Project and Finance group, I think would be a useful, because otherwise you end up with too many cooks in the kitchen, frankly.
Yeah.
Yep. Aaron, do you want to?
I was only just going to speak to the fact that acknowledging Councillor Pottinger's lack of response, we have had a staff member on bereavement leave, and we will have that response back to him as soon as they're back on deck.
Yep. to me, that wasn't necessarily a specific issue, more of a, I guess, a structural issue. Is how do we keep driving some of these things forwards, Barry?
Yeah, this CCTV thing has been a big thing for me ever since I've been here. Yeah, I'd like to be on it, but I think it's a good, Tom's idea of it being with Grant and the projects committee is a very good one.
Yeah. And doesn't always require your staff to be here specifically. Unless there was something that was on, I mean, we can drive a lot of that stuff as well.
I think I'd be nervous around presenting information without anybody to talk to it. Sure. I think I'd expect that, you know, part of the benefit of having that come up is the ability to ask questions around it, sure, as opposed to it just simply being a standing document. So we would have to look through staff coming up to the table. I think the other thing around this is, you know, what Lee does with that program dashboard. You know, I'll be honest, that's the top of what we do in terms of project management in the organisation. We don't have that maturity of project management across every project that we have in council. Now, not saying we, you know, that may mean a rejig to which projects we have on that strategic projects list, but we also, you know, we also need to be conscious of what's an operational, you know, project that it's okay not to have necessarily that high level of professional project management rigor around, because we don't necessarily want to project manage the entire business at that same level.
I guess what we're trying to get here is there's some feedback as a governance group on where we're progressing with the CCTV. We've given a lot of commitments to the community, and sometimes you can't be, you know, we can't hold people to that. But certainly, as we head in towards the next round of school holidays, which are coming, we're getting significant feedback from the inner city area, which we've upgraded, for people to say, retailers to say, and others, including the police, to say, hey, we can't manage some of the teenage behaviour we're getting in those areas, and I've been party to a couple recently, unless we have some sort of TV coverage that allows us to track the offenders. So it's if we can get some update on where that's at, and so we can tell the community, yep, it'll be here at Christmas, or no, it won't be, or it'll be staged, which I think is the message I've been trying to say. Of course, the question then comes as, well, when are you starting? I don't have that. So it'd be helpful to just have a state of the play where we're at with that. Trish.
I just think what we've put in place here today, or reiterated it by having Leslie and Ria, yep, the ones driving it, is that if we had any letters in the future, they should perhaps come to them and they drive it through or find out the answers, so that we don't have a lot of bits and pieces around this. To make some progress, we really need a sort of one point of contact, and then from the staff when they're ready, or, you know, in due time.
Yeah. So just as Michael's to my left, not to the right, it's just suggested that we could add a portfolio in our governance statement, which we're coming up to shortly, that recognises CCT as being a significant issue, and put the two councils on that, put their hands up. That's not to say that once we have it up and running that we can't take that portfolio away, but it has some significance. So unless there's any opposition or views against that, we'll make that happen. Mr. Arnold.
I personally think that Tom's idea was better. I think this is a project, and I think it should be in the project management team. There's nothing to say that Leslie and Ria couldn't, within that group, look after it, keep an eye on it. Yep. But I still think everything should be in the one group, project management. It's project.
Yeah, but what that portfolio will do wouldn't take it away from where it reports to. It gives some energy to the two people that are going to try and drive it. I think one of the issues that we face with hindsight, which is a beautiful thing, is that when we set this up, we had quite a few people on that original group. We had Mary Wardens, we had police, and we had different retailers on, which was... They are, but the trouble is when you put together a big group like that and you're trying to drive a project reasonably quickly, you sort of lose that ability to get it forward sometimes, I think. So anyway, if there's no opposition, we'll have those two names added. Right. Brief discussion on that.
We just need to put the...
Oh, okay, so unless there's any further discussion, I'll just put the minutes with the recommendation of the Finance and Project Committee to the group. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Notice of motion that we have a request for an update from the Great South on planned oat milk factory. So before I give Rangi the chance to talk to his notice of motion, just for those that are new this term or even newer again, just the process with notice of motion is such that there are special rules and standing orders around speaking rights to a notice of motion. So Rangi will get the first chance to speak. Others can contribute as well. Some argue that once you've got 3 people talking to the affirmative or 3 to the negative, that's where it stops, but that's not my flavour to any meeting. And so, but I will have a degree of tolerance for Rangi to have a right to reply, seeing it's his motion, to people that might raise issues as well. So you can have a slight debate back with that person if they want, and at the end that the motion gets put. Rangi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, it's pretty straightforward in its wording, and I'd just like to, at this stage, read the notice of motion, and that is that Council formally, via the Chief Executive, request that representatives of Great South attend the September 26th Council meeting and explain the circumstances and events that has led to the planned oat milk factory no longer being located in Southland. So that's me for now.
Yep, thank you. I'll take the first chance to comment to that. So from me personally, I support that. I think and I've been quite open with the media and with Great South itself. I think the comms or media around this whole debate, around this whole issue, has been very poor. It's left a whole lot of question marks, both at this council table and in the wider community as well. Just a reflection in your summary, Rangi, at the very end, it talks about us being responsible as elected members to ensure such monies are moved wisely. I just didn't want any confusion about that people understand that we have not put money into the company as such. So we haven't put any operating costs or capital.
That refers to our funding of Great South.
Correct. Yeah, I just want them to understand that, because over the 10 or 12 years it's been going, we've probably, through operating funds, put a significant amount of money into developing this project.
Yeah. Sorry for the confusion.
Yeah, no, it's all right. It's all good. And yes, Tom.
Certainly support the motion, Mr. Mayor. It's essential that we get Great South to come and speak to us, but I would also suggest that it's essential that we withhold judgment in any further comment until we actually give them the opportunity to do that.
Yep. Thank you for that, and I can just add to that. I was notified very early in the process in relation to the decision by the board of New Zealand Functional Foods to go away from Southland and head towards Canterbury. But there are commercial negotiations going on about whether Great South, which we own, exits the company or stays within the company. And they are very sensitive at the moment, and this is not me trying to fob anybody off. And so you are right, there are negotiations going on, but by the time Rangi's motion comes to light, which is next month, I would expect Great South to be in a position to update us around a couple of things. The position they took on the board, when they let us know, and what the impacts are of staying in the company or coming out of the company. And if they're still commercially sensitive, we still need to have that advice. And I've told Ian Collier that. And if it's still commercially sensitive, we'll have it within PE. If not, then we'll have it out on the table where everybody can understand what's going on. Ria.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also support Corona Pottinger's notice of motion. Along the same lines as what you've already said and what Tom's brought up as well, is we need to be careful that we've heard from them their reasoning behind this, if you like, backtrack. One of the things that I guess in this process leading up to this really disappointing outcome is that we had the CE here talking to us. We had their wonderful public meeting saying how great they were doing and funding and what was on the horizon. And literally within a week or so, this has been put to the public that they were wanting to move the site to Christchurch. So I think it is essential that we do require them here. They need to be accountable for what's happened, and it needs to be completely transparent with this council.
So I've personally asked Ian, because I've had ongoing discussions around this, some things which I can share with you. I've asked him when he comes forward to Rangi's meeting meeting that Rangi's requiring next month, we want to know when he knew the decision was up on the table, given that he's on the Functional Foods Board.
Correct.
And we want to know that in alignment with the Beyond 2025, which was a big promotion. Did they know beforehand or did they know after? So I want some specifics around that. I also want to know how he voted at the time, given that we are a minority shareholder in the company. The other partner has 51%. So, and what was his thinking around that? Was he, I guess, should he have required a vote of, hey, we don't want to go down this track, or was he in a position that he couldn't make that decision being a minority shareholder, and then subsequently needed, what's the best deal I can get out of this for the shareholders that he does represent? So there's some real tough questions around that.
There is.
And I expect answers to those.
Good.
Leslie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not opposed to the notice of motion per se, but I will go back into some history in making a comment here. The whole Oat Milks project started out as a Venture Southland project. So we all know it's been a very long-term project. This council, and Councillor Pottinger will remember, he was one of the main proponents of replacing the then Venture Southland structure with what has become Great South, with a much more commercially focused independent board. Doing that does bring the consequences. We asked for a board that was more commercially focused, and our partners in the venture agreed with us. We have a Great South board that was there to make commercial decisions. The Oat Milks project has got to that stage. Decisions have been made. I think, as the Deputy Mayor said, we very much have to wait for the report before any judgments are made about that commercial decision on behalf of a board that this council actually helped to put in place as an improvement in what was seen as the Venture Southland structure not working as it should in the commercial sense. So I do have some reservations about any of this discussion if the questions you have indicated are to be answered actually being held in anything but in committee. And I do think that has to be stated at this point, that this may be an in-committee discussion, because we have a board that we agreed was a more commercially or had more commercial acumen. That's why they're there. We have to accept that that may bring certain consequences. We know that we are a minority shareholder, and a 49% shareholder is not a 51% shareholder. So I'm just indicating very strongly that this discussion may be necessary to be held in committee, and that there may be only a very small part of it able at the present time to be held in public. And I'm aware we're talking about the 26th of September, but that is not far away in the commercial decision world, and I just would not like the public to believe that there is going to be a fully public grilling of the board of Great South on the 26th of September. That may not be the reality of what we're facing.
Yep, fully hear what you're saying, and it would be my expectation that we wouldn't go down that path either, but we will then subsequently have to have some really sharp comms coming out of that, so that people do get some information about what's transpired. And I guess just for lay people, and I'm probably in that category as well, but we've got other people around the table, Tom and Grant in particular, who will know more about this than me. It's not necessarily how much shares you've got in the company. The rubber hits the road when you get investment, capital investment comes in. So we've got one big partner already there, but we've got another one signalling. And when they come in, what shares you've got, they can then get diluted down significantly. And so I guess that's one of the things we need to understand is how well has Great South and its board positioned us for that capital investment that's coming in.
And as we're indicating, it has to be a session that has gone into very much with an open mind and with the consideration that most of it may have to be in committee because of the commercial sensitivity.
Oh, it could be
and I don't
all in
think we
there.
should lead the public to believe otherwise at this stage.
Well, I think if you, don't know how to put this, but if you heard the way I originally said that, I said that this will probably have to be all in PE unless Great South gives us a hands up that they're okay with it to be in public. And I don't think that'll be the case. It'll be too early, 4 weeks from now. But we do need to understand what's gone on there so we can account for it. I mean, it's a little bit like at the same time we got the salmon farm consent denied. A good example is I've been into Ngaitahi recently and said, what's going on? You know, where are you guys going to take this? Because I'd like to know. But it's commercially sensitive for them and it's decision making at the very top of the tribe. And so I get a bit of a wall of silence, and quite rightly so. They need to be considered about what they do as well, for sure. And we'd all like to see a salmon farm. We'd all like to see the open up as well. Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Personally, I'm very disappointed and annoyed that this proposed planned oat meal factory is not being built in Southland, and I totally agree with Councillor Pottinger's motion and also the comments that Councillor Campbell has made also.
I think it's a reasonable reflection, Peter, that there'd be nobody around this table that wasn't disappointed that that's not here. I mean, I've had people from all over the community and seeing me, including the oat growers themselves, to say that they're really, really frustrated by this. So we need to understand why. Trish.
I think the thing for, excuse me, I think the thing for me was that we were sideswiped by the communications that went out.
Yeah.
As a councillor, we didn't know anything and we couldn't answer anything.
Yep. Die quietly. But you're right, Trish. I said that in the opening gambit that the comms was not good at all. It was very poorly presented, and they acknowledged that. So we've got some ground to recover. Nobody else? Any other? A right of reply there, Rangi?
Yeah, it'd be not like me to
not take the opportunity.
So, look, all I want to say is that Great South is a council-controlled organisation, and as a CCO under the Local Government Act, it's required to operate in accordance with its statement of intent. Now, the Great South Statement of Intent has a dedicated section at the end entitled Shareholder Requirements. Within this is two subsections of note. One is no surprises, and that's followed by a second subsection called public expectations. And in that, it has an interesting sentence to committing to transparency and accountability to the public. So that is contained within their statement of intent. So I believe that this council and the public have the right to know, has Great South complied with its statement of intent? Now, this does not need to be answered in public excluded. We are talking simple, this is in the Local Government Act. I can't see any reason why discussing the statement of intent would need to be, it's got nothing to do with oats. So that's my view on putting all this in PE. I believe this part, which is very important to me, would be fine in public. And advice from the CE, maybe. Michael, would you have any comment regarding that?
Through yourself, Mayor. It's a tricky situation in relation to the public excluded from perspective of what you raise. What you raise, yes, that is a public can be a public discussion. However, I think what's been highlighted in the previous discussions give rise to some commercial sensitivity in relation to some of the other topics that need to be discussed. But it is very hard to split the two in relation to that session. My advice in relation to it would be to have the discussion in the public excluded with a view to actually promptly release the nature of the discussion out to the public straight after that meeting, except for those that are still commercially sensitive.
No, I'll take that advice. Thank you.
Yep. And certainly from my end as well, Rangi, as we come to this issue next month, we will have, I suspect, a recommendation on the table for PE, but we have control of that. And so we'll make decisions about whether it's in PE or not in PE. We can do that at any meeting, being mindful of what some of the others have said. So there's no further things. Obviously, you've put the motion.
I will move that.
Yeah, I'll second. Any further discussion on that? All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Next agenda item is the Connected Murihiku Joint Committee nomination. So I'll take that as being read. I've got a range of issues within that. So, oh, sorry, Rhiannon.
Quite noisy, isn't it?
Side there.
Can you hear me all right? Kia ora, councillors. Okay, so this first paper on Connected Murihiku Joint Committee nomination is a procedural paper. You'll recall that you received the earlier paper about setting up the appointments committee. That appointments committee has met. They have selected 3 very talented community representatives, which is detailed within the paper. This is now the next stage of the process, which is to confirm council's representation and alternate, and to approve the joint committee terms of reference. So just a reminder that council's role in this regional project is we are providing the support, the governance support for the project. Less buzzy. Okay. Sorry, I've distracted myself. So just to confirm and remind you that council's role in this project is a regional project that's come through the Just Transitions process. We are providing the administrative support to the joint committee through the early stages.
Okay, so we've got a suite of recommendations here. Before we get into that, I guess I just want to make my position known. So there are 2 issues for me. One is for Pania and for Evelyn. I noticed that they call the group Connected Murihiku Joint. Is Murihiku an okay part of that title, given that Murihiku is much wider than where this is going? I'm not trying to be facetious or anything, but we had that with the museum, that you didn't want Murihiku because it's a much bigger geographical patch.
So, Mr. Chair, the Rūnaka's position is clear that we do not refer to Southland as Murihiku. Murihiku goes to the Waitaki. Yep. However, we do also recognise that we're not the only people who live in the community, sure. And some people do think Murihiku is the right term. Yep. Connecting Southland would do fine for me. I'm not sure, you know, I'm not going to die in the ditch about it.
No, I understand that.
But my preference would be that it didn't say Murihiku, because that means that we're going across the boundary into Otako and yep. Puketeraki and Moeraki's Takiwa, and we don't want to do that. Right.
I personally don't have a position on it, and, yep. and like Evelyn said, a lot of our community, Māori community, refer to Southland as Murihiku.
Okay.
And
well,
so therefore I would...
Yep, so I guess whoever the representative is that we're about to nominate could just take that forward, whoever that person is, or persons. The other thing for me is that I've got a personal position on this, which I don't agree with the whole focus of this group. I think it will achieve nothing at the end of the day, and I don't take any pleasure of saying that. But when you look at the major focus, there are two components to it. One part is to connect up all the agencies, which includes government and non-government agencies that might help in a particular area of making us connected. And it doesn't say whether that's just in social services. It's actually much wider than that. So that's going to be an online presence that they're going to do. So it'll be like an electronic dictionary about agencies that might be able to help you if you needed help doing some work. The downside of that is that's a heap of work, and an agency in town's already done that, so I've got the list there, which is about 85 agencies long. So I don't see why we'd reinvent that list anyway. And the other issue for me personally is that it's been my experience in social services is that the agencies need to connect with each other so that when they need that connection, the connection's already built, as opposed to having one coordinator that just coordinates all the agencies in town. And a good example of that is recently we had the Southern Regional Leadership Group over the tail end of COVID, which it worked well in one respect, but the respect it didn't work well and it wasn't coordinated. We had 85 stakeholders on it. And so while it was nice to hear what the prison was doing in relation to COVID, it really turned off a whole lot of other people that were working in other spheres. So I'm not sure what it'll achieve. I think we'll end up at the end of the day of having somebody that's trying to connect with probably about 120 groups, where the coordinator making that connection won't actually connect the groups themselves unless you can get them into the big room. And if you try and get 120 or even subsets of 30 into it, you won't get that connection that you need to do the work. And the online presence, I could do that tomorrow with the list that I've already got. So that's my little wee statement on that. I accept that we're down the track, and I'm not opposed to people doing what they want to do. Yep. So Grant, I've got you, Evelyn.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm of a similar view to yourself in the sense of reading through this. I can't see what this will achieve other than a whole lot of sort of getting together in cups of tea, which is all very well, but I can't understand the outcome of it. Yep. And I note the reference through to the Taranaki wheelhouse structure, and it's hard to see what's being achieved there. The other thing I'd look at in terms of the delegations on page 71 of board books or 4 of the paper is it seems to be an agency that's appointed or going to administer the work from central government, be it MB, innovation, those sorts of things, and they'll carry out the activities in point 5. So yeah, is this entity, and what I'm trying to understand is what pairs are we giving to this committee to go and decide on the things that are important for Invercargill, because it's a regional entity, and we've probably got an example of another regional entity that's a bit unclear how it's working at the moment for our city. And so that's the concern that I have, is that are we giving delegating authority and decision making pairs to this entity and then losing all control for our city in terms of develop, our needs and those sorts of things. And then secondly, and I think this is really important, central government funding comes down and this entity is going to be the decider of those where those funds go, and I'm just not comfortable with that. I haven't seen it work well to date, and don't know whether I'll see it work well in the future.
Yep. I guess just I'll get there, Brett. I see the hands going up. Just in response to that, Grant, I've worked in the Family Start program, and one of the successes we had in the Family Start program was to have some central agency delivering a service. So this one was delivering to mums with young babies, and we needed about 85 partners to be able to do that. And we spent best part of 3 years connecting with those people, one agency per week for 3 years. It took a heap of time, but you needed the personal connection. You just didn't need a list. If you ring up and say, look, I'm Trish Boyle from education, they don't know you. And personnel change. So this list has got quite a bit on it. The other thing is that it's not necessarily connecting us. If you look at the specs, it also covers central government as well. So we're really linking in the silos that sit in Wellington, or might sit out in regional structures as well. So it's going to be a huge beast. But at the end of the day, I still don't know what we'll achieve by that. I just don't get it. It talks about the database having about also covering what they describe, quoting best practice. Well, if you go into the social services field, you could sit there for years discussing what's good practice or best practice. So, got a whole lot of names here. Evelyn.
Yes, tēnā koe te koromatua. For me, having sat through or participated in the wānanga that produced this initiative, I think there's a misconception about what is intended to do. So this is about if you are in a remote area and you're a new mum and you're wanting to see if you can find a support in your area, perhaps you're new in that area, you can go on a digital platform and dial up what you want and get the sort of support. It may end up doing other things. It may connect you to MEC or Parent Line or any of those things because they're all relevant. But the idea is that all in one place, somebody that is just down the road, an organisation that is in your nearest little small village or your nearest hub centre, or a volunteer that has said that they will spend their time talking you through this issue. You might want to know, is there somebody in your area that is running a knitting club or a book club, or you might want to know something much more in depth. Is there anybody in your community that actually is easily accessible for JP services? All those sorts of things. Now, we might think, oh, that information is there, but it's in so many different places. And the idea of this is that any group that wants to have their service, well, that was my understanding of it, any group that wants to put their services forward to community will be able to be accessible from there. This is about something that we experienced during COVID, which was our lack of connectivity to one another. And how do you access these conversations if you don't know where to start? I accept that it sounds a little bit big brotherish, but it's actually you being able to access central government services, not central government services telling you how to live your life. If we look at what some of our community said, in fact, a lot of the community who were represented there, is the disconnection between agencies, that even agencies in the same area don't always know what is offered by somebody. We get new contracts all the time as social service providers, as health service providers. It's really difficult for our companion agencies always to keep up with who is delivering what. And so we don't all get big splashes on the front page of the paper like Ngākete did. Sometimes it's just a very quiet contract and you just go about doing the business. How do we connect people up to that service? Sure. So I understand why you might be sceptical, but I don't see any decision making in this. This is about information acquisition and dispersal, as far as my understanding of the project. And if I've misunderstood it, Rhiannon will no doubt tell me. But for me, ko te rātahua, that's the fruit of the work, is to connect people up to things that they need to be able to get to easily.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Alan, you had your hand up? Oh no, just the pen out.
No,
Alex.
Just waving it around, that's all.
I'm just working off a list from a person that writes with the left hand.
My apologies. It was Alex, Councillor Crackett.
Sorry. It's you.
That is me. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Awesome to hear the kōrero around this stuff, but I think it's more just a slight little bit of a shift in understanding of what this project actually is. So central, regardless of whether or not we appoint somebody, this work is going to continue anyway. So it's whether or not we want to have a hand in steering how the allocation of the funding goes and what it does in the community. Secondly, for the appointments to this committee, a focus was on making this entity self-sustaining. So we asked the candidates who came along, right, how are you going to guide whoever's appointed into making sure that this model is self-sustaining, so that, because obviously for us, a focus was not having this come and knock on our door for additional funding in future. So yeah, if it continues, if we don't put forward a delegate or an alternate, the project still continues. it's central government's funding, it's not our funding, so we don't have a mandate. We're not delegating anything. There's no, I guess, risk from our perspective in the sense that it's going to run off with our money. It's not our money. I think it's also really important, like, when not to look a gift horse in the mouth. Like, this is an amazing amount of funding for a project that's going to connect our rural and disparate communities, our multicultural communities that come in and don't have, I guess, access to support networks like this. It actually is, and like Grant said, modelled off a successful pilot project in the North Island called the Wheelhouse, which pulled together the list, and like Mayor Clark said, probably utilised the list of 84 agencies or whatever it is as a foundation platform to start from, but also covers things like training, mentorship, also, how to access other funding streams if you're an organisation in Invercargill, all sorts of things to try to, like, give that community hub for somebody who might be feeling a little bit lonely or a bit disconnected. And it is all stemmed from, like Reverend Cook said, from the kaupapa of connecting all of our communities. So, like, I think it's really important that we don't lose sight of the fact we don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. And this is absolutely something that we want to be involved with. Whether or not we do it or not, which is in this case, we're not doing it, we want to make sure that out there in our community that there's as much opportunity for connection as is possible. So, yeah, thank you for listening to my rant.
Look, it was okay feedback for both you and from Evelyn as well. And it wasn't my intention to not have us involved. We need to be involved, but I just wanted us to be clear that this could be an area that we don't get results that we might be wanting. But it was interesting. I mean, I went to a meeting at the Marae last week, and I raised with Odell, how many, and she won't mind me saying this, how many support agencies are there in the city? And I get this commonly with everybody, including the large government departments. Oh, there's a couple of dozen. So well, there's actually 85, and the list is growing every day. So we don't know where those other support agencies are. So I guess. Grant, were you? No, he's too busy. Leslie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Crackett gave a pretty comprehensive global picture, so I'm not going to repeat the things there that I agreed with, but I do just want to say, as Council's representative on the Citizens Advice Bureau, that the Citizens Advice Bureau holds part of the database, but not the entire database that this is aimed at building. So while agencies like Citizens Advice have very good databases and are one avenue of contact for many of the people that Councillor Crackett and Reverend Cook were talking about wanting access somehow, this can only build better. And from that point of view alone, I'm in favour of us appointing a representative and an alternate, because as Councillor Crackett eloquently said, why would we look a gift horse in the mouth if it's actually going to improve our community outcomes?
Yep. Thank you. Grant. No,
you just read my mind. I was going to put my hand up. Thank you. So, having heard the wonderful explanations of this, how we're going to measure the outcomes. So, how we're going to measure, and there's nothing in the paper that tells us how that's going to be measured, about the number of people that are accessing it, what the change and differences in their life, because I don't disagree with the concept and theory, but the difference between theory and reality is what difference are we making to people's lives, and there's no management accountability or outcome accountability in the statement that I can see that's clear and obvious. Say, because of this, people's lives have changed.
Yeah, through the chair, if I may, to answer Grant's question. Yep. That will be developed and orchestrated by that advisory committee once the appointment's been made. So KPIs established, and that report, all of those reporting lines established, and then the advisory committee minutes will be put forward here. So we will have oversight from a governance perspective.
So if you took just to reply, but if you took a commercial perspective, you'd expect to see the outcomes in a business case before you agreed it, not approve it and then hope that the business comes along. Because, and to my very point, how can we be clear of the outcomes actually that are waxed about are actually going to be delivered? And what's the accountability to this committee if they're not?
So again, it's central government that will be requesting that, not us.
I know, and that's
Yeah.
probably the very reason why we're here and having the discussion, because it's a central government issue where there's no accountability and there's no measured outcome. It's just, let's do this project and it's going to be wonderful. And I don't disagree with which has been said, but what I want to see is that accountability around what are the changes to people's lives as a result of this investment. Because there's probably $1 million sprinkled in here.
Through the chair, can I just add here that until it's started to be built, you can't have the outcomes in any detail, because at the moment this project is talking about building blocks. So until you've actually built something, it's a little bit hard to zero in on the exact outcomes you are expecting from something that is not yet fully built. We know that there are bits of databases all over the place that need connected. We know that that's a job that is going to take quite some expertise. But I can see a great deal of logic in actually getting this up and running to the point where you actually write KPIs that make some sense. It's a little bit difficult to do it right at this point where you haven't got anything built. It's almost like a build it and they will come. We've got to build it first, and the building block to start it is to get this committee underway.
Come back to that, Tom. I've still got your Rhiannon. Yeah, sure.
Look, I think I'm certainly convinced of the need, particularly on the basis of Evelyn's speech, which I thought articulated extremely well. The only concern I had, and I did actually voice it when this paper came up the last time, a few months ago, is that it seems to me just to be grossly overgoverned. I mean, there was a mayoral forum decision, and I'm not going to, question the wisdom of the mayoral forum, but they never knew how the whole thing would fall out. But it was a mayoral forum decision that would be a joint committee. So we have a joint committee which will manage or govern the work of one person, coordinator. And although we can say, well, the joint committee is made up of people who are either volunteers or councillors who are being, paid anyway, but their time has value. So it just seems to me to be overgoverned, and I would probably have rather seen it. I'm going to support it anyway, but I think I would rather have seen it probably tucked under Great South or something like that. With the three people we've got, Robin, Jess, and sorry, what was the third name again? Robin, Jess, and Stacey, who look excellent choices as community representatives, acted as a sort of steering committee of that individual working within Great South. Now maybe that ship has sailed, but I just think it's just overgoverned. And the individual who does the job is going to have constantly try to work with the joint committee.
And that's one of the things that I did a quick calculate on. I think the group that we're nominating representatives to, if you include alternates, could very well be 11, 12 or 13 people.
At least.
So anyway, that's not what we're here for today. Rhiannon, I'm going to give you the chance to say a few things.
All I just wanted to just make a comment on from a procedural point of view, which Tom actually touched on, is that this project has been shaped up through various waygates through the MB process, which was required. Council's role through that whole process has simply been in the support, has not been in terms of shaping up what the project looks like. The project has come from the community, and the governance structure has come from the mayoral forum when they considered 5 different options in a detailed discussion. The mayoral forum then provided the support for the project, and the project is proceeding at the regional level. The intention is that the joint committee will do themselves out of a job in 18 months and replace it with a much more nimble structure. It is, I agree, a weighty governance structure, but it has been put together with thought, because one of the things that has come strongly through this whole process is how important representation is to everybody. It was important to the council participants, it was important to the Runaka participants, and ultimately what the community wants is a nimble governance structure that doesn't involve such a formal process, but a transitional step is needed. So I hope that gives some reassurance to you all that it is intended to be a transitional step. At present time, the funding involved is 200,000. That does not cover ICC's contribution, which is in supporting the governance and the administration, which is not a small amount of work, but is nevertheless a large way through. The first meeting is planned for the 31st of August, and that's all the point that I just wanted to make.
Thank you. Evelyn. And then Ria.
Actually, Rhiannon sort of nicely summarised what I was going to say, because I only agreed to go on this on the basis that it was, relatively speaking, a short-term gig. I don't see my intention of being there forever. Even less than 18 months would be nice from my perspective, but it's not a job for life, a committee that's going to be overwhelming forever. And thank you, Rhiannon, for addressing that issue, because I think that's important people understand that it's just to get things off the ground.
Reading your lips, Ria, did you want to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say that thanks, Rhiannon, for that clarification. In terms of the, they might very well do themselves have a job in 18 months' time. I'm interested with the amount that you've given us at NBIE putting into this. What is the council's commitment to that?
ICC's commitment is in-kind support for the governance structure at this point.
Yeah, thank you.
Alex?
Thank you, Chair.
And then
Mayor.
Leslie is the last one.
May I please nominate myself as the
No,
alternate?
no, haven't got that far yet. So just wanting to know whether there's any further discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was actually going to nominate
a
representative and an alternate just to move things on, because I thought we were at that point.
Yeah, okay. So nominations then.
Yeah, if I can, nominate myself as the alternate, and the reason for that is I really believe in this kaupapa, and I really wish that I could be the representative.
Yep.
It's just the meetings that we've had so far, and the ones that seem to be working with the joint committee are all on Thursdays,
Sure.
and that's a day that I'm really struggling to get to at the moment. So more than happy to be the alternate, but if I could.
Like it when people self-nominate, because that shows a commitment. Somebody else.
I'll second that.
No, haven't got that far yet, Tricia. You putting your hand up?
I don't want to do it. No.
You want to be the representative?
No, thank you.
Is there any interest anywhere else in being the primary representative? Ouch.
Could I suggest that perhaps we nominate Councillor Crackett and enter discussions on the meetings being held at a different time?
Evelyn, you're already there.
I'm already. Well, I was thinking about that. If the council were willing, I don't see that I would be in conflict wearing two hats. It's not like I'm going to be arguing against.
No, what I was suggesting was
best interests.
Whether it's possible to move it away from a Thursday meeting.
So the Thursday meeting is not particularly dictated by me, but it is. There is some practical considerations for it not being a Tuesday, for example.
Yeah.
So I guess, Rhiannon, I'm not sure about the discussions about meeting dates going forward. Could we have that at the inaugural meeting?
So where does that leave you, Alex?
Well, I'm having a chat to my learned friend here.
Yeah, I'm open to it, but I hear some really good. I really agree with a lot of what Grant is saying. I probably am a big picture. What does the end goal look like? What does success criteria look like? Where's a model that has worked? And so I think my hey, look, I'm keen to dive in and get more understanding, but I want to see a model that I think will work and deliver real results. And so I'm happy to dive in and do my bit.
Well, that sounds like an ideal situation where I'll nominate Councillor Broad and Councillor Crackett.
I second.
You
got and perhaps the best idea, the best direction at this moment is to nominate both and for them to work out, depending on the setting of meetings, which one would be most sensible to be the representative and which would be the alternate.
Yep.
And come back to us with
Happy with that.
an update.
Any other hands up for either of these two positions? There being none, congratulations.
Thanks.
Well done.
Well done.
I promise you, it's going to be great.
Yeah,
We'll
I-
watch.
We'll hold you accountable.
What does great look like?
I can't promise.
Yeah,
I can promise that we'll do our
Depends
best.
how you
18 months to
guide on us.
We look forward to the report.
Don't aim for the moon and end up on Mars.
I'll just
We'll hit the moon.
Liz to write that down, spelling great, Grate.
It's all right going further.
Okay.
It's great to
To move the
overshoot.
rest of them.
Yep, so we've got a suite of
You've got enough fuel.
of
Yeah,
6
exactly.
recommendations. Thank you, Darren.
Advice.
Barry, was that you? All those in favour?
Aye.
Great. You got that, Alex? We just moved all those 6 suites, which included your nomination. Excellent. Next agenda item is civic awards.
So, Your Worship, I asked for this to come forward, and that followed an approach from a member of the public, and I certainly support us reintroducing the opportunity to recognise people who volunteer within the community and have given a great service. Artists Court may also sit in there somewhere as well. I'm not 100% sure on why it's being referred back to the Community Wellbeing Fund Committee, but
The Community Wellbeing Committee.
but it's in the recommendations.
So given your experience, what are you recommending to us in relation to the timeframes? An annual or a triennial thing?
Triennial.
Okay.
Yep.
Once every 3 years.
Rangy.
Look, I would support this as long as we show consistency to the way it was run previously. And then, it keeps apples with apples. And
Yep. Okay, Trish.
I think we should run it. I think it's an excellent idea. I believe we should run it annually, and my reasoning for that is there are a number of people in our community who could be eligible for these awards, and to do it every 3 years, we're missing a whole lot of people. And I think that's just my reason. I'd love to see it, happen, but I would like to see it annually.
So before I come back to you, Darren, just as an opposing thought to that, one of the things is when you have an annual award, you've got to fill the list up, as it were, sometimes. And you can sometimes struggle to get, I shouldn't say quality people, but you feel as an annual award's come up, so you've got to have X amount of people nominated or whatever. So I'm going to go back to Grant, to Darren, who had his
Thanks, Nick Clark.
very similar.
Look, I agree. The Civic Awards are special, and they recognise people who've made significant contribution either on the local stage or on the international stage. And while I understand the sentiment of having something that recognises people annually, there are things like the Kiwi Bank Volunteer Awards like that, but these are special. And coming back to what Councillor Pottinger said, we did it once a triennium previously. There were not huge numbers of people being inducted just to make sure that there is a significant threshold. So I'm happy to move the recommendations, but ask officers to work with the Community Wellbeing Committee to finalise and deliver the awards. Because I'm not on the Wellbeing Fund Committee, and I'd quite like to have a hand on it.
Sure.
I'll second that, presuming that we're saying we agree to reinstate them in number 2, that we make them triennial and number 3, and that we change number 4 to the Community Wellbeing Committee.
Mr. Mayor?
Alan.
Well, I was actually thinking that Trish's idea is probably a better idea. I'd rather see it an annual thing, and it doesn't have to be 15 nominations, I mean, there might only be one, there might only be two, there might be none some year. But at least when the thought for that person to be, what was named to be put forward, it's fresh. I mean, 3 years later down the track, it's almost possibly too late. So I think it should be done annually, and it doesn't matter if there's one, none, or three. And I think so. I'd support the motion, but I'd like to see it annually as opposed to triennially.
Ria.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support 1 and 2. I do think that I'm more of a biannual person.
Just to mix it up.
Because I have
return ticket to Thailand.
You pay and I'll go. But just with having, I mean, not arranged civic awards, but other awards with like-minded community people that do significant work. Triennial is too long. You could be basically awarding a person that's already passed over an award, not had the significant happiness of actually being recognised for their huge contribution to our community, which is why I'm trying to compromise and go, biennial is better than a triennial. I agree with it going to the Community Wellbeing Subcommittee. We have our hands inside of the community there. Lots of stars come through, and I think it's positive for us to recognise those members in our community that are giving significantly locally and nationally. Yes, we do have loads of awards nationwide around this country, and I think it's time that we put these back into our priorities.
Barry.
Yeah, I agree with what Ria's saying there. I think it should be biannual, and totally support it going with the community wellbeing. That's my thoughts on it.
So I'll put the motions in two forms. One that we agree or don't agree with having them. Sounds like we will agree. And then I'll open up the options to 1, 2 or 3 yearly. And we'll just do a straw poll to start with, just to get an idea where the feel is around the table. And then we can put a motion based on that. So,
Mr. Mayor, I think the problem you've got is that you've got a mover and seconder already.
Just a point of clarification. Mr. Mayor, was around, shows that 95, 96, 97, no awards made. Now, was that for a reason of civil unrest, or was it there was no one available to choose, or just wondering if there was a reason? Obviously, COVID has been stated for other reasons, but it's got 95, 96, 97, no awards made.
But if they're triennial, it's only 1 year, isn't it?
No. These were year after year back then.
Oh, sorry.
That predates anyone at this table.
86, we had no awards made too.
Oh, no, but it just seems weird that you would not find a person in those 3 years. So I just wondered the reason.
Rhiannon's going to enlighten us.
So just to note that it has been a fairly kind of informal process that has flexed and been run differently at different times. And my understanding is that in those years, there were no applications that the committee felt
And I noticed it finished in 2016. There were other councillors around at that time, and I wonder whether it ceased to be a thing at that time because it was felt to be, you know, too difficult or whatever. I mean, you got to choose people. What's the selection panel look like? How do you make sure that the most worthy people are being nominated, not just people who happen to be known by some of them? And you know, I feel a little bit, and there are many people who are deserving of these awards. I notice when I look at the list, very small number of people who are actually been nominated over the years. I recognise quite a lot of the names, which makes me think that they were. I don't mean related personally, but were known to council in some way. Rather than necessarily people who were the most deserving. So I feel a little bit uncomfortable with it. I'm going to vote against it, but I don't think we should jump into it without just thinking about this is actually quite difficult process. There'll be a lot of administration, I would think, in collecting the nominations and then in making sure that judgments are made fairly. How do you know, what does fairly mean? Is it just on the basis of, you know, what the committee think, or is there some criteria? So I would caution just let's.
Can I respond to that?
Sure. Yep.
Okay, so the panel who decided, first of all, nominations were called for from the public, and so it wasn't done from within council. And there were people who were nominated who the judging panel didn't feel met the criteria. It wasn't a reflection on the work that they had done, but it was more the standard of the criteria that was expected. The judging panel at that time was the mayor, deputy mayor, and the chief executive. It doesn't need to be that. I had an opportunity to be on it, except my father-in-law was nominated, so I didn't take part at all. But I think this is part. Tom raises some really good points, and I think this is part of what the officers can work with the committee to finalise before we put it out there. Just to make sure that there is consistency, and that comes down to how we recognise them as well.
So are you recommending that we work through that process before we agree on whether we're going to have it or not?
It would be, there's no point working through the process if we don't want to have them.
Okay.
But we could invite officers to bring forward, sorry, through you, Chair.
Yeah, sure.
We could invite officers to bring forward a kind of skeleton of how it might work and maybe an assessment of how they would, you know, how they would manage it. And we would be voting then on the basis of a little bit more information than we do now. I'm not looking just to kick it into touch.
Yeah.
I just feel it's an easy thing to say, yep, that's a really good idea, and then find, you know, like
I think, look, I agree. I think a paper would be useful, and I think a paper with some feedback from staff around admin might help to inform the decision around how frequently it's done as well.
That's actually all encompassed in the
Standing
motion
orders,
that's
please.
already
But
been
it means we
moved.
step back from
Yep,
defining
Rangi?
whether or not
Can
it's
we follow standing orders, please?
Sure. One speaker at a time. Okay, Rangi.
Look, I'd like to add one that that elected members aren't eligible for the role that they play as elected members. They may have done some other thing in the community, which has opened some for eligibility, but serving on council, I don't believe is something that makes you eligible. So I'd just like to throw that in there because not knocking any of the names previously, but you know, moving forward, if we're going to have a paper, then that's something to consider. Well, that's my viewpoint.
Sure. Trish, just before you start, I mean, one of the areas to cover for you, Tom, might very well be that we have a dual award system where we might also have an individual recognised, but we could also have an organisation recognised as well, which might capture a much wider group of people and recognise what they do in the community as well. Trish.
I'm not suggesting that the Wellbeing Fund does this, but the Wellbeing Fund has a very clear criteria and it gives you a percentage to that criteria, which would mean if we use something similar, then we would award or not, depending on whether they met the criteria.
Yep. Rhiannon, you're the last speaker to this. Thank you.
I was just going to give comment to the question that's come up around resources and how resource intensive it would be. So the reason for the recommendation to include it within the delegations for the Community Wellbeing Fund subcommittee was to speak to this matter of providing support for the process as efficiently as possible, and hence also the suggestion to restructure the way that the awards are communicated slightly, so wouldn't exclude anything that was covered before, but would align it with the wellbeings and the priorities that council's given. That was given with the views to be the most efficient way to provide this resource. Obviously, doing it annually will be more labour intensive than doing it triennially or biennially.
Okay. Well, I'll put two parts to the thing. I'll put the first part, which is do we want the awards? And then we can come to the issue of the timing with the mover and seconder as well. So I'll just put the motion that that we agree into to having civic awards reinstated. Yeah. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Now we come to the issue of whether it's annual or triannual, and just sought some advice from Michael to my left that I can do a straw poll just initially to decide whether we wanted annual, biannual or triannual, with the ability to condense that list down to 2, and then with the blessing of those that moved the motion and seconded, they would be the 2 options that we'd put. So can you refresh my memory about who the nominator, who the mover and seconder are?
Darren and Leslie.
That standard 2, that's cool. So I'll come back to you two later on to see whether you're happy with that process. If we reduce it down, otherwise the only 2 options we're going to have on the table is either annual or triennial.
Well, it was moved as triennial.
Okay, no, I'll test the water if it doesn't go down that track with triennial. If there are people opposed to it, which will include those that are supportive of annual or biannual, then the vote will go accordingly, and then we'll come back to what we want subsequent to that. So I'll put the issue of the in 3, the issue of it being on a triennial basis, and all those in favour can show their hands, so I get a feel for this. 1,
What is this
2,
one for?
for 3 for triennially as opposed to bi or annual, which is 1 year to 1, 2, 3, 4. So that motion is defeated. And so now I guess we come back to the issue of annual or biannual. Somebody like to move one of those 2.
I'd like to move annual.
Annual, Alan.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Grant, and I'll put that again. If it's defaulted, it'll be back out to biannual. So all those in favour with a show of hands on annual. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm there as well, so that's 6.
There we go.
Where does that leave it?
It's done.
All those
Congratulations.
Who's called the opposition?
Biennially. Love that for us.
What is it split? Oh no, so that's lost as well. So by default we're back to biennial.
What's that like? All in favour of biennial.
Is it lost?
Yeah.
So well, I
Lost
can,
is
you can do
6,
the show of hands.
7 is a majority.
Yeah, do the show of hands again to make sure that everybody's clear about this, because we want an outcome that we live with.
It's already been taken.
What we're voting on is annual versus biannual. And so I just need a show of hands on the ones that want annual. 1, 2, 3. Oh, not you, Rhiannon, scratching those. 3, 4, 5, 6. That's not a majority, so we have it as a biannual result.
Might be abstaining, you might be abstaining, you know, you'd better ask for a show.
But
That's it.
so that,
All right.
You've got to.
Okay.
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
Alan,
Let's see what
no,
you want.
just to make sure there's no confusion there, Alan,
I'd like to ask for a
I'll
show of
vote.
hands for the opposition, please.
I'll show of hands for those that were opposed to annual.
So now ask a question again, please.
But this is
Well,
where the.
Alan has said, because there was only 6 in favour of annual,
It didn't
then
make
the
it
other 7 must be in favour of biannual. But he has raised the issue
so you're in favour
that
of
somebody might
you're
be
in favour of
abstaining.
Or none
By
of them.
default.
So
Yeah, no,
what
but that's
question are we
probably-
voting on now?
That's how it works.
Alan's called for a
people-
show of hands against annual.
Well,
And fourth biannual, is that what I mean?
there's an easier way.
No.
Not necessarily.
Hang on, slow down, slow down.
Gosh.
Ringy's going to have a meltdown shortly. I'll put the motion, subject to somebody seconding it, that we have it biannually and see if we get a majority that way. So I'll put the motion. Who's put the hand up second that? Barry, thank you. All those in favour of biannual, now raise their hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's a majority. Done. Every second year, folks. So you've got 2 years to get the policy together.
It was a marathon in itself, wasn't it?
I can get it in the weekend.
Yeah. What a long-winded affair.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, but could we now put number 4?
Yes, sorry. So
Number 1 and 4.
So we'll put 1 and 4, which is the receiving of the report and the fact. Did we agree on the community wellbeing fund subcommittee?
I nominated it as the Community Wellbeing Committee.
And I seconded it as the Community Wellbeing.
Excellent. So we just put those two motions in. 1 and 4. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Too late to ask a question, Ria?
No, I know.
Those who want to vote against that.
I'm in favour.
From the fund as nominated.
Are
Do
there
a good
any
job of it.
members in opposition or want it recorded as being away from the subcommittee to the committee? There's none.
It's deletion of the word fund.
Holy crap. Right, item 11. Are we 11? Yeah, it's climate change. I'm not going to say anything on this.
It's me again.
Yes, you again.
So this paper speaks to the work that the regional working group on climate change, the regional interagency working group on climate change, is doing. We would have workshop this last week, but both representatives of the group, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Soper, were not present. So this paper is in lieu of that workshop. It's really an opportunity for you to provide feedback at this halfway stage in the process to developing a regional climate change strategy, which would be consulted with the community on as part of each council's long-term plan next year. So the intention of the regional climate change principles and aspirations are to form the first step of that strategy. It's to set the general high-level regional direction. And this paper provides in the attachment the paper that's been developed by the regional interagency working group, as well as some points for consideration in terms of the implications for council in moving in this direction. Just to remind you that we do support the regional working group on climate change. It's in alignment with the direction set in the last long-term plan. And then there will be the opportunity for this council to consider what actions it specifically would want to take in support of the strategy. So I thought perhaps that the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Soper may wish to speak on this matter.
Well, I'll comment first, if you don't mind, and Leslie can comment. Look, there was a lot of work went into this. That group, which comprised, as well as Leslie and I, 2 representatives from each of the other TAs in Environment Southland, plus representatives from Tamarama, and representatives, I think separately, I'm not sure as part of Tamarama, but probably separately, from Manawhenua. We had 4 meetings, I think, Leslie, if I remember correctly, and they were long meetings.
Yes.
What you're looking at now is the output of that. And while it might look at first reading as a bleeding obvious, you know, the reality was that we had to get alignment across all 4 of those councils to the wording and commitment from each of us that we were prepared to, you know, recommend it to our respective councils. So we had to get it right as we could do, and as I say, there was a lot of hard work went into the wording. I think it's actually a very good document. As I say, it might be bleeding obvious, but so too with the 10 Commandments. And I think that we can, as a council, get behind us and then move it on now to what we're going to do. Leslie.
Leslie.
Thank you. Mr. Deputy Mayor and Chair. Tom has given a good description of how much hard work has actually gone into this, and they have been long and intense discussion meetings to reach this point. And to do the Deputy Mayor full credit, he has on a number of occasions suggested that this council could move earlier than the 2050 official net zero date, and that would be open to any of the councils. But the fact is we worked long and hard to reach a document that was agreed by all the parties around that table so that we could bring it back to our respective councils in time for our long-term plans, and to move the whole issue forward, being very clear about the need for community consultation and further communication with communities on the way to reaching what is a pretty major set of net zero statements. So it is, I totally agree with what the Deputy Mayor has said. It's a carefully worded, very comprehensive document, and we both recommend it to Council. With the proviso that Council could decide to move much more quickly.
Yep. And just a personal view from me, I'm not sure this is the right mechanism going forward. My view of this, and it's reinforced by the background information on page 78, on page 80, that climate change received the lowest rating in the surveys that were done, and second lowest ranking in the order of importance of 14 regional issues. And I struggle with that because I hear it all the time. People know we've got to do something in climate change, but don't know what we've got to do. And when I listen sometimes to the different voices in our council cluster, people are all rowing the walker in a different direction. So if this helps give some strategic direction to that, that would be great. My personal view is that if we have whichever government we have post the election, it would be really sharp if our regional councils, Environment Southland, took over not just the current suite of environmental issues that they manage, but also took over climate change as well. That would allow central government to have a top-down system, which required those 14 regional councils throughout the country to give some serious direction to where we need to go and some of the work that we need to do, because it just seems to me when you've got 67 councils working on a bottom-up model, there's just no consistency. But I do appreciate the work that's been put in, and it's way better than just us sitting here by ourselves without having our partners on board. So we have, Evelyn.
Yes, tēnā koe. So just to reiterate, Te Marama was a full participant at the table, and that's our regional environmental entity. That includes those who sit as governors at both Environment Southland and myself here at ICC. I haven't personally appeared at that. I do it as a governor in other manners, but having said that, I don't think that we can look at the results of a survey on matters like this and say, well, because it rated really lowly, it's not important to this council. One of the reasons that I believe that we are here is to show leadership. It's to actually sometimes to bring to the public's attention and to make decisions that we know need to be made, whether or not the public actually really recognises that they need to be made. You're trusted to do these things on behalf of the people that you represent. We don't always know what's best for us. We don't always recognise that having a good night's sleep is a really good idea when you're 6 and the light is still shining outside, but your mother knows you need to get up and go to school in the morning. I am not comparing the ratepayers to a 6-year-old. What I'm saying is that if you don't understand what the implications to you of this thing is, why would you say it's important? But we can't say that we don't know what the implications of climate change are for the city. We can't close our eyes and we can't say the people aren't ready for this, so therefore we won't do it. This is a thing we need to discuss and decide, because we have got significant infrastructure that we know will be impacted by sea level rise within the foreseeable future. And when I say the foreseeable future, less than 50 years, less probably than 25 years. If we don't start making decisions now, it will be too late. And the cost to our community and the pain that it will cause will be more significant. So whilst I understand the purpose of surveys as an indicator of what people are prioritising, sometimes as leaders we actually have to say, we recognise that this isn't the top of your list, but as the responsible trustees of your assets and the future of this community, we are drawing this not only to your attention, but we are making this a significant priority for your council table. And we'll receive your grateful thanks in the future, because this is the hard stuff. This is not the easy stuff. This is where the rubber hits the road, if you like, in terms of governance. So I am grateful that for the leadership that everybody has shown, for the very hard work that has been put into this, for the clarity that is displayed. And I'm sorry, but I believe whichever iteration of governance we have at central government, climate change and adaptation and investment is not going to go away. And we as a council can't be any different. We need to bite the bullet and just get on with it.
Thank you for that. Rangi.
This takes me back to the vaccine mandate. I'd like to actually see some real science in the fact that there's no doubt the sea level rise, okay, that is proven. But if we're going to make decisions in a governance role, we don't want to be going off on tangents on personal beliefs and whatever. Look, we don't want to act like frantic people who are trying to save the planet without sensible science. And now, fair enough, the sea level is rising, that is a proven fact. But we also need the science around what else is happening in the weather patterns and everything. So, sorry, this sort of sitting around with a guitar singing Kumbaya, I'm not into that at all. Sorry.
So can I come in? Chair, look, I think it would be absolutely negligent of us as a governance group to say that we simply don't believe, or we're going to wait until the waters are lapping Tay Street before we're going to believe that climate change is happening. That would be absolutely a dereliction of our duty as governors.
I did not say that, Tom.
We have got to be, the things that need to be done are things that will be literally intergenerational. You know, things like building up stop banks and so forth. It's going to happen probably over the next 50 years, and we've got to start planning for that. And if we say, let's wait until, you know, we have absolute proof with our own eyes, literally water lapping Tay Street, if we're going to wait until then we would run out of time. We'd no longer be able to respond to it.
Sorry, Chair, I just need to say that I acknowledge sea level rise as a problem. I wish the other member would actually listen.
And no, we're not going to have any more comments like that. Thank you from either party. Leslie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to make a comment on the matter of the so-called low ranking on a survey and just point out that often surveys depend on what is included in them. Some of the other choices, and Rhiannon will probably be able to fill in all 14, but if you are faced with housing, transport, climate change and several other issues as regional issues, it is very likely, and the other one would be alternative water sources, it is very likely that our population might very well choose housing and transport, the roads that they are walking on or driving their vehicles on, as more top priority issues because they are more immediate in the mind, and it is perhaps perceived that we've got more time on climate change. The reality is that the group that the Deputy Mayor and I have been on has had a great deal of scientific data presented to us. There is a great deal more that Environment Southland is sourcing at the present time, which is why there are not some more scientific statements in the material than there might have been if all the LiDAR data, etc., was available. But the fact is, we have jointly agreed as a region that we have a serious climate change issue that we are all prepared to agree on principles to address. We are a long way forward from where we were 10 or 15 years ago. I agree that we do not wait until we have the refugees fighting in the streets to get away from the water that is coming towards us, but at least around this table everybody has actually agreed that sea levels are rising. If we can all agree on that, can we please get back to the principles of this document, which is we have an issue. It is a global issue, it is a regional issue. We have all our regional players agreeing that on a document to start actually seriously addressing it and seriously putting it into our long-term plans. So I urge you to get away from the is climate change real implications and actually look at what this document is saying regionally. We actually have a regional agreement. Let's go for it. Thank you.
Harry.
Yeah, sorry, I don't agree with you, Leslie. I don't agree with climate change at all. I think we're chucking a lot of money at something that, unless you can prove to me and show me documents, then I might start believing it, but I don't believe it for a second at the moment.
Oh, there goes Buzz Lightyear.
Yep. Just going to go slowly now. Darren.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. And therein lies the beauty and the burden of democracy. I understand and respect the two councillors who've said that they will subscribe to sea level rise, but climate change is more than that. And Councillor Pottinger used the vaccination issue, and in some senses there are some real similarities in selected facts that are put forward from either side. So that's why it's up to us, I think, through this process to look at reliable science. Someone will always find on the amazing internet some information that will be to the contrary. The bottom line is change is happening, and it includes some significant change in around weather patterns. There's a whole lot of people in the North Island at the moment whose lives are severely affected and will be for some time because of a significant weather event. Now, the thing is, they always happened, accepted, but they are happening more frequently, and that's the concern. And when you see the feedback that the citizens of the world, including our young people, who we keep saying that we're building the world for, march in our streets to say, can you please be aware of this? I'd like to be one of those that says, yeah, we're listening. But let's go through and democratically come to a resolution as a council, bearing in mind that within the council, people can hold their own views.
So, just a quick reflection from me before we go to some others who want to speak. I think Leslie raised an interesting issue on 2 points. If we'd run the same survey in Gisborne, as opposed to raising it here, I think climate change would have been the top item, not the 14th. And the other issue, which I think is just listening to what I hear away from this table, our biggest risk is probably flooding as opposed to sea rise. And we don't have the leader data which we want, which is coming through Environment Southland. With that, we'll know where our risks are in relation to rivers expanding and flowing into our cities and townships. And there's a lot of creative work going on there, so that will certainly help. Ria.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to support what Councillor Leslie Soper said actually. One of the, looking through the information that we've been provided with, it is very extensive, but I also want to note that fifth form school cert geography, we were taught there that there are two weather patterns in this country, La Nina and El Nina. We were taught various things from that were actually based on school cert certificate that were actually scientifically proven. I think we're seeing intensification of climate behaviour, and I think that our youth council sat here weeks ago telling us how they had dealt with that very issue and that they wanted us to pick up the reins and look after their future for them, work in harmony, work in the journey together. And I think it's imperative to us to show leadership, to not be ignorant, but actually to open our minds up and know that something's not always going to be the same way year after year. You know, we look at the floods here, we look at the floods in the North Island, we look at the devastation that has happened with those natural disasters and the depleting way that livelihoods, families have been halted. So yes, I do agree that when a survey is presented to our ratepayers, often it is they can't make the connection as to what they physically see, feel and touch. If that survey had been perhaps targeted in things that they could connect with as being climate change, we could have had a very different outcome. Most of our ratepayers are of a certain age bracket that this is mind-boggling for them. So yes, we do have to show leadership, irrespective of what your personal belief is. There is evidence to say that things are happening and that we need to mitigate for these.
It was a bit harsh talking about your school years and remembering those. Probably 2/3 of the people in this room can't remember going to school.
5th, 6th, 7th. Then you've got Massey, then you've got university. There's so much science that we can't ignore it.
Alan.
Yep. Me?
You.
Righto. I'm sort of in both camps here. The one thing, we've been talking about climate change really probably only for the last 20 or 30 years. And it's, you know, there's been a lot of scaremongering going on, and you know, the fact that young people now speak out about it is because of older people, the rhetoric that they've been announcing for the last few years. Now, I'm not denying that there is climate change, but I believe that there has always been climate change. I mean, we live on a ball that goes around the sun. I don't have to explain that to everybody, and it can wobble, it can move, it can wobble over time. I mean, our time of reporting weather is such a short time in actual global history, if you like, that we seem to think that we have made such a huge impact on it because there's 7.5 or 8, 9 billion of us now. When I was born, there was only 2.5 billion people in the world. Now there's 8 or 9 billion people. So in my lifetime, the population's changed like that. Nobody really talks about that. The fact that there's a massive amount of pollution in the world, nobody talks about that. They all talk about climate change. Now, the climate has always changed, and it always will continue to change because of the nature of nature. Now, if we're going to build sort of houses in low-lying beach areas, well, obviously they are going to be at risk of rising tides. I mean, I sort of agree with Rangi, I agree with Barry, I agree with the people that are sitting on these committees. But to be fair, I also believe that the 24% of people that are mentioned in the poll also. It's not a high priority to a lot of people. It's not a high priority to me. I don't think we're going to make any impact on it whatsoever. We're such a small, as a country, I know we've got to do our bit, but we're just such a small contributor to the carbon thing, the footprint of the world. Yet we all think that we're going to do something marvellous here and change everything. We're not going to change anything. The best thing we could probably do is don't let people build houses at sea level. I mean, but we still do. And I don't understand that. That's something that we could change. We could make a difference. Anything else that we do, we're going to make no difference. We are so small, but we imagine ourselves to be so big, and that's what's happened to the whole world. We all think that in this, everything's just changed, but it's been changing forever, and it always will continue to change. I mean, I believe one volcano eruption does more damage to the atmosphere and the ozone layer with a carbon blockout than probably running cars, everybody driving cars for like 10 years. And I think that the fact that everybody talks about it is just because the scaremongering that's gone on by older people talking about it. it's not such a scary thing. It's just a fact of life. So I don't know where my conversation here is going. I'm not agreeing with anything or against anything. I'm just giving you a bit of what I perceive to be my view.
So I've got some other people online. Trish.
I think this is where we have to. Sorry, my throat. Excuse me.
Oh, moving on.
I think this is one place where we have to show strong leadership, as some of my colleagues have said. It's absolutely a no-brainer. And you know, Councillor Abbott, Councillor Arnold, if we didn't help, if we didn't try and make change, nothing would help. There's a beautiful story about throwing a starfish back into the sea. I do believe that we have to do the piece that we can. And we have to show to our community that we are the leaders they asked us to be, whatever it is. And then the other key thing for me is the fact that the whole regional council is on this path together. And I really do believe that we need to take some action from here.
Tom.
Two things flown from Alan's comments that I wanted to comment on. The first one was, I think actually Alan captured it perfectly when he said, you know, kind of agree with everybody. Because nobody's 100% sure. Yeah, it's just a reality. I'm not going to say I'm 100% sure that climate change is happening, but I must admit my belief in terms of probability has gone up. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would have probably said it was 1 chance in 10. Now I think it's probably 7 chances in 10. So, you know, but nobody knows absolutely for sure. Look, I don't know absolutely for sure that my house is going to burn down, but I'm still unsure against that happening. I take action today by taking out insurance policy because it might well happen. And I think the probability is high enough now that we've got to take out that kind of insurance policy. The other thing that Alan said that I want to comment on is, you know, we have on the one hand mitigation and we have adaptation. Mitigation is reducing our carbon dioxide emissions. That is a national thing. We play a part in that, but our role is very small. I agree with Alan. Our role is very small. But in terms of adaptation, nobody's going to do it except us, right? So protecting the city from flooding, whether it comes from heavier rainfall or whether it comes from rising sea levels, nobody's going to do that. That will be a council accountability, our combined councils accountability. And I think you'll find that the bulk of the work that this team now moves towards will be in that area. LIDAR, for example, that's about adaptation, not about mitigation. It's about the work that we have to do as a council to protect the city. Mitigation sure will do things. I mean, I think our carbon dioxide emissions are, what was it, 14,000 tonnes? Does that recall, Rhiannon?
I'll trust your recollection.
Right, I think it's 14,000
You're
tonnes.
about right.
That's not a lot. We could fix that, frankly. So that is not going to be the main body of work. Main body of work is going to be protecting the city in terms of, you know, stop banks, maybe even seawalls or whatever. But it's all doable. But it takes a long time, and unless you start now, we're going to run out of time.
So before I give two others a bit of a speak on this, you're right, Tom. I don't always agree with things relating to Gore, but they've actually got their head around this. So a good example of that for me was when we were at a recent mayoral forum. They said that the LIDAR or leader information will tell them where their pressure points are in the rivers, depending on how much water you put into the rivers, either from the sky or from the mountains. And it was really interesting. They said, well, why do we keep building bigger stop banks? Because all it does is just move the volume somewhere else. Why don't we have stop banks north of Gore, that as we see them getting to critical points, we intentionally breach the stop bank and let the water run onto a couple of farms where it'll do some damage, but far better than running into the main streets of Gore. And I just thought that was a really proactive way of doing it, adaptation, and they're the opportunities I think we should look for. So two more speakers, and I'll give you the final one, Leslie, seeing you're on that committee. So Pania.
Tom actually just sort of like hit the nail on the head, but I just wanted to support the paper.
Don't keep agreeing with him. It's not healthy.
No, totally support the report that's been put before us. I think the aspirations and the principles are being well thought out, and I totally support and uppy this moving forward in some way or form, because it's like Ria said, you know, we need to show leadership in this area, and it's something that has been parked for a long time. So.
Yeah. And just as you reflect, Leslie, on your final speech to this group, the recommendation, the second recommendation up there is to provide feedback on the draft that we're now considering. Is that something you do, you and Tom do, or is that something that Rhiannon does, or both? And what sort of feedback would we give? Because we had quite a diverse conversation around this table. I think you can pretty well pick up where the general thrust is going from most people.
Well, the three of us are attendees and your representatives at the joint meeting.
Sure.
So I'm sure between the three of us we can feed back a balanced view and the decision that council will come to.
So was that it from you? Or?
No, that wasn't.
Oh, okay.
I was merely answering your question.
Yeah, that's okay. So I've got that sorted.
So, having heard from a number of councillors around the table, I am sorely tempted to play the devil's advocate and start an argument that in fact the earth is flat. However, I am
Is there a seconder for that?
I am a responsible councillor, and I am going to go back to the actual point of what we are dealing with here, and really just reiterate the comments that the Deputy Mayor and I have made. A great deal of work has gone into this. We can, as a council, play a significant role in moving this issue forward. There is absolutely no doubt that the balance of evidence is weighted in favour of us needing to do that. In my case, I would go further than Deputy Mayor and say that I am 100% convinced of the reality. However, the weight of evidence is clearly at the point where we have no choice on this issue. We have the entire region agreeing on this, and I'll just refer, Mr Mayor, to what you have said, that Gore has admittedly themselves moved leaps and bounds to be in a position where they are a very on board part of this coalition who sees that we have the need to actually progress this for the good of our communities in future. And I'll just make one more reference to that survey that was mentioned. The highest ranking issues on that survey were issues like housing and transport, all of which have significant climate change factors in where we are with them today. Reference has been made to where we actually build houses in the future, to our need for more stop banks, to whether some of our roads are in the right places, and perhaps we're going to have to face the reality of some shifts in our whole transport network in the future. But all those top-ranking issues had climate change implications and serious considerations as part of them. So it's not a simple matter of saying climate change ranked 14. It's a matter of saying what were the climate change implications of every issue that was on that survey. We've now got an agreed regional plan for how we can actually move this issue to the benefit of our community, and I really urge this council to make it a unanimous agreement that we receive this report and move forward. Thank you.
So just as a last reflection before I put the motion, I think when I listen to the discussions, I can understand where those that are opposed to mitigation come from, so long as we struggle to get to carbon zero by whenever, so long as Brazil, America, China and India are doing the damage they're doing, we will never get there. But as Tom quite rightly said, we do have significant options because we seem to be light on damage at the moment to do a lot of adaptation, which is to look for opportunities where we can reduce our risk of the impact that the global players don't get there. So I think that gives, for me, a possible way forward, that we don't just throw our energy at one particular issue that doesn't lead anything, and look for options like the Gore option of the leader information and see where the potential is. So two motions in front of us, or two recommendations. Somebody like to put both? Leslie and Tom, thank you very much. You did say yes.
Yeah, you know.
Oh, yeah. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. All right, the next. Okay, so we've got, I'm told that we have to have a toilet break now for 10 minutes. So, and a cup of tea or a
It's no different to planting.
All right, welcome back from that short break. Okay, so next item on the agenda is the remuneration reallocation. So for those that are still talking, Alex, this is taking the portion of the remuneration that we had with Nigel Skelt, or he departed, and now reshifting in it. We've collectively had a council's only meeting on this issue, which gave us a bit of a steer where we wanted to go with that. But to my mistake, I didn't realise that the amount of money that remuneration we were giving Grant actually pushed him slightly higher than Tom in the deputy mayor's role. So that's created a bit of discussion. So, but I've spoken to both Grant and Tom, and so I guess I just want to affirm with the two other. Are you falling apart, Peter?
My name is.
Just confirm with Darren and with Rangi that they're still happy about the issues that we discussed previously about the level that project team lead would go up to.
I think the climate change discussion may have changed that.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
You didn't want to.
No, it's okay. I'm good.
Yeah, you're good.
Being facetious.
He's running a temperature, he said.
He's running a temperature.
Yes, I was. I wasn't aware that it pushed above the DM. And,
Yep.
I mean, I'm quite supportive of option 2, if that's the equitable one.
Well, I've spoken to Tom and to Grant as well, and Tom doesn't have an issue with it. And I personally don't have an issue with it, given that it's that level of the remuneration is specific to the museum project. And I know that, Darren, you have a lot of work in district licensing, and Rangi has it also in WasteNet as well, or waste minimisation or whatever. That there are extra roles that come on top, but the project is a very big commitment of time. So I guess the impact is really for you too.
I don't mind.
You don't mind?
Doesn't bother me at all.
Okay. Anybody else want to have some discussion about the options that are put in front of us by Michael? Leslie, yeah.
I also just want to say that it's so unusual to have any remuneration of any other office holder going higher than the deputy mayor. I just find that uncomfortable and very unusual. If it's a conscious decision for council to do that, council has the ability to do that. I just find it an unusual thing to make a decision that would lead to that effect. I mean, a deputy mayor is there and respected as being there for a whole host of responsibilities for which they are given a higher remuneration than other members of council because of the role they're fulfilling. I just think I just looked at option 1 and thought that is a very unfortunate consequence.
Sure.
And yes, and therefore, either we preferred option 2, or we came up with another adjustment that didn't lead to that effect.
Alex.
Thank you, Your Worship.
No.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Nobby.
Thank you.
It's a Heather. I'm sorry. My inclination is toward option 2, not too dissimilar to what Councillor Soper has just said, but also that taking into account that there are many advisory boards and bits and pieces that we sit on, as well as subcommittees that we're appointed to, that as councillors we're not actually, remunerated over and above for, but yet conduct considerable more work, I suppose, on a baseline. And I think looking at Councillor Soper herself, she's appointed to quite a few of our additional commitments and doesn't receive any additional base remuneration. Absolutely empathise with the huge amount of work that Grant is taking on board for us, and I think that the $5,000 on top of his chairmanship is considerably more equitable than superseding the deputy mayor.
Marina.
Me. Oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Michael was just reading your mind that you wanted to say something.
No, I thought you said Marina. So. I was like, who is that?
Still on holiday.
Sorry.
What have you been drinking in Phuket?
Oh.
It's on Stingray.
You're in trouble. Right. So I guess a lot of this was discussed while I was away on holiday, and I'd had looked at these at option 1 and 2, and for me, option 1 wasn't an attractive offer. Option 2 leaning more towards, but that's because in my mind, when you structured up at this council, the lead role project 2025 was one sole councillor with no chair position, because that's how it was prioritised, that they only focus on that one project to get it across the line, to make sure that we have everything possible, levers there to balance out budgets or what have you. And superseding that, Grant's also a chair to the Finance and Project Committee. My kind of gut feeling is that Grant needed additional support. I realise it's outside of this actual document, and I mentioned that to the Mayor previous to the council meeting today. I think for me, as a councillor, and yes, going on to subcommittees and doing more work, I'm not here for dilling up the money. That's just my personal opinion. I feel that we're voting on giving ourselves potentially a bit of a pay rise, and it feels uncomfortable doing that. It really does. But a decision has to be made. So, I mean, I'm leaning more towards option 2, but I know that Tom comes up with these equations at times that seem to be more fairer and more appropriate. And I just wonder if there's such an equation that we can give and make an option 3 from.
Any further discussion? I won't drag Tom or Grant into this. No. We do have an option. Look, I can leave this paper sitting on the table to our next meeting, because the impacts can always be backdated, and ask Michael to go away and try and, I guess, get some more realignment between the project lead and the deputy mayor's role. I mean, that's not hard to do. So if that has the blessing, then that's where I'll leave it, and we just come back at the next meeting, because it's not urgent, but we do have to use the money. Otherwise, we have one huge drinkies at Christmas time, so it disappears. Yeah, so I'm happy to do that and ask Michael to just tweak the figures a little bit again.
Happy to do that, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Thank you.
You okay with that, Tom?
Yeah, look, I mean, I wasn't going to comment, as I said to you, Mr. Mayor, and I don't mind at all if the numbers fall in a position where, you know, Grant earns more than me. I did, though, have the view, which I will express since you invited me to. I think when Nigel was appointed to that project lead, it was on the basis that he had no other promoted position, and it would have been quite unreasonable to ask him to take on that volume of work without any remuneration at all. Yeah. I think as I look at the chairs, you know, Dan and his numerous roles that come out of the committee that he chairs, and the work that's done by Rangi, particularly saying WasteNet. You know, the chairs do take on project work which is assumed to be embedded in their chair remuneration. So in my view, if a chair had been asked to be the project lead on the museum, I don't think we would have agreed to having a $10,000 additional payment. If that had been the case, we would have said, look, it's embedded in the chair's allowance. So coming to the situation that we face now, the reality is that we did actually have an allowance for Nigel, which was completely appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate to completely extinguish that with respect to the role that Grant now fills, because even just by personal experience in the last couple of days, I can see how deeply embedded Grant is in the in the museum project, and and how much work he's doing in that area. But nevertheless, I think it's also reasonably argued that it is a project, and he is project chair, and therefore you could say partially remunerated for that already. So if I had a button to press, I'd probably best press option 2 button as being a fair way of doing it. But as I say, if we did end up, but I don't really agree with a kind of artificial way to do it. I don't want anything done just to make sure I'm $1 higher than granted and like that. I mean, that isn't the issue at all.
Yeah.
So I would support option 2. Maybe there is another option 3. Certainly, if we were going option 2, I would propose that $5,000 split to grant, and the remainder is split equally between all other councillors. Now, we could kick it into touch and say, Michael, go away and look at other options. I don't know what other options there are. I mean, you end up with 2/3, 1/3, or do you? I mean, I don't know if there's any particularly logical way we end up. We just have to fix the number.
I won't put you on the spot, Grant, but I will give you the opportunity.
No, you won't.
Okay. Any further discussion, Alan?
Yeah, I just agree with Tom. I think it's just simple. Just do a vote now. I don't think you need an option 3. Just option 1 or option 2.
Well, if one of you will move option 2, we might have a vote.
I'm prepared to move option 2.
Right.
I'll second
I'll
that.
move option 2. Yeah. I'll second it.
I'm just going to take some advice for a minute. Okay, so just a bit of technicality there. So before we move, accept the mover and the seconder, I'm going to move that option 1 changes to Michael giving us a further option. So what we'll be voting on is either option 2, which is sitting in front of you, or we go back to Michael for an extra that option 1 doesn't kick in. Because if 2 doesn't get over the line, we default back to 1, if you understand what I'm saying. So I'll move that way, that option 1 changes to seeking some further advice, if somebody would like to second that. Yep. Trish, all those in favour?
Sorry, before you do, Trish.
Sure, yeah.
I actually don't quite understand what you just said. Are we voting for option 2, or are we voting for...
No. If I leave the 2 options in front of us and option 2 doesn't get over the line, 1 will. What I'm saying is, what I'm picking up around the room is that the 2 preferred options we would like in front of us is option 2, which is currently sitting here, or going back for Michael to tweak things, as opposed to option 1.
So it's an amendment to the resolution, Your Worship.
Correct. Yeah. So, hey?
Not a motion.
Just an amendment.
It's just an amendment at this stage.
Yep.
Because I think you would need to put option 2 first, Mr. Mayor, and then if that is lost, the amended option 1 would follow.
Okay. Well, then we'll do that then. So, who were the original movers?
That was Councillor Ludlow and Councillor Arnold.
Okay, put the motions for option 2. All those in favour?
Aye.
Is there any opposition that we need to be aware of? Option 2 it is. Well done.
So you just had a pay cut?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I want to bring that forward. Yep.
Before we do project 1225, we're just going to do the last one in the open session, which is the issue of the amendment to the government statement, which just appoints Steve to all the jobs that we don't want.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, and there is an additional recommendation that needs to be made just to amend the delegations register, just to reflect that the Community Wellbeing Fund is having an additional person added to its number by Councillor Broad's appointment to that. So that is just number 5 showing there. It changes from 5 to 6. And that just confirms that Councillor Broad is appointed to the Infrastructure Committee, the Community Wellbeing Committee, and I'm noticing that there's a capital C and a lowercase c, but that's okay, we'll tidy that up. Community Wellbeing Fund, and is taking the place into the Invercargill Public Art Gallery. And further to that, the conversation that we've had earlier today, appointing councillors Soper and Bond to be the portfolios of CCTV for that time.
So I have another part of that as well, that in the Community Wellbeing Fund, the Deputy Mayor is currently in there, and he would like to come away from that, acknowledging that Steve replaces him, and we still to have the 2 alternates there as well.
No, that's perfect. In that case, Mr. Mayor, I would withdraw number 5. That does not need to be there because the number of councillors does not change.
Yep.
So we will. I will withdraw number 5, and we'll make that that change that councillor Board comes in for Deputy Mayor Campbell.
So just for your benefit, Trish, does that create you any issues with 1 off and 2 alternates on? So Steve comes on in place of Tom, so it's like for like, and you have 2 alternates there as well.
I don't see, it doesn't seem to be a problem.
No, okay.
Just a point of clarification.
Sure.
I don't see Councillor Broad's name being proposed against the Community Wellbeing Fund.
No, that was there was a clerical error when the information came through to me, and I missed that in my report. I am doing that today when I was advised that that was the intention. So that is why you're seeing it in the resolutions in front of you. That is an oral update because it came after the major late item had already been prepared, and I didn't want to do a major late item.
Oh, I apologise because I wasn't looking at there, I was looking at my screen, so thank you.
No.
But can I just suggest that you correct the word receives?
Yes.
The computer doesn't like it.
I know what it is. The IPM?
Yeah. So
another and accept and receive.
Another clarification for you, Michael. That Steve's role on IPAG
doesn't like either version.
Replaces Barry.
Yes.
Yeah, and also that I'm not listed as being an alternative for Bluff, the Bluff Community Council.
I'm reasonably certain we have done that.
We have.
Okay. We have. I'm pretty sure we've done that. If that change hasn't come through, I apologise. It will be correct because that has been done.
That's right.
So just for your benefit, Steve, infrastructure and community wellbeing are the core of our business, I guess. Risk and assurance and finance and projects are more peripheral committees, I guess. Most of our work's done, so it's a bit of a learning curve for you. Best to be on those 2 as opposed to the alternates. And I assumed, subject to you nodding at me in the next couple of minutes, that you would be happy to be on the Wellbeing Fund, which is a distribution of funds out to community groups, and that you'd have an interest in the Public Art Gallery, which has some ongoing work about where that will actually sit in the next year or 2. Excellent. Ria's going to say something.
How do you know that?
I can just tell.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Oh, you weren't?
No, it's really
excellent.
Sorry, Your Worship, did Councillor Stewart say he wanted to be removed as the one of the alternates for the Bluff Community Board?
No. She's gonna say something, isn't she?
Yeah.
She is.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Is this where I like to request that I go on to the Finance and Projects Committee? Seeing as how we're doing a bit of tidying up.
Yeah, I don't have any opposition to that, Michael. I don't have any opposition to that. We tend to be light on that committee anyway, aren't we, Grant?
Yeah, we are.
Yep.
We'll add that on as an additional recommendation from me because I knew that was coming.
Yes.
So you're happy to have her on the committee, Grant? Okay.
Train her up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all cool.
What you said earlier.
Yeah. All right, we've got a.
Sorry, just one more amendment. Councillor Broad has indicated that he'd also like to be an alternate for Youth Council. He came along to our meeting last week and I believe, enjoyed it. So, but also, can we add that in as well, please?
So we've currently got you, Darren, and Alex. A third person's okay, or does it complicate things?
The more the merrier.
Okay.
No, all good. Thank you. Noting that also. Thank you.
Yep. So as I said at the beginning of the term, these appointments need to be places where you feel good about working, not just a quota. And I've publicly acknowledged the work that Rangi does on WasteNet or waste minimisation, and the CCTV, which has been talking about for about 6 or 7 years now, and the extensive work that we do out in the community through you, Leslie, and through you, Darren. So I'll put those series of motions, series of amendments, which I think I can do anyway, can I? The appointments are not subject to it. So this process of the vote is not approving the appointments, just amending the statement. Yep. So all those in favour?
Aye.
Any opposition? No. That was your chance to get out, Grant.
Where am I getting out to?
With Ria. Yeah. Carried. So now we have project 1225. Ah, Lee.
The one we've all waited for. The one we've all waited for. Do you want to take this? Yeah, because we can share this one. No, we can share this one. Just move it across. Just grab it. No,
Thank you, everyone.
Welcome, gentlemen, and Lee.
So, afternoon, all. Just to be a little bit time precious, because Rowan needs to be on a flight back up to Auckland, so I wouldn't mind through you, Mr. Mayor, if we can address the naming a little bit earlier in this report.
Sure.
Just to allow.
Do that right now, if you like.
Perfect. But I'll introduce the lovely gentleman that's with me. So on my left is Ro Hoskins from Design Tribe, who leads the cultural elements of 1225.
Welcome.
And to my right, Cameron Curd, who looks after our museum sort of technical expertise and is leading our experience piece as well.
Yep. So for your benefit, Lee, I can move recommendation 4 now if you want to, just if you want to clear that up.
Yep.
Okay. So quick discussion around that. We've had a councillor only session as well, where we've tried to narrow down what the naming of the museum would be. We got to the stage where the advice from iwi was that Murahika was not appropriate because it's wider context, so it had to be Southland. From my end, I just wanted the word museum in there so that it has its ID. And Te Arua is a previous title that's been given, name for the museum, so that seems to sit well. Yeah, I'm coming to you, Rangi. So the issue, I guess, is we've got 2 options here, but I will open up the discussion if people want to about those 2 options as well. So Rangi.
Just through you, Mayor, is we have provided a presentation pack if the councillors would prefer to go through that pack, and Ro could take us through that if that would be helpful for the councillors to go through.
For the naming?
Yes.
I think we had quite a robust debate of the council-only issues when we went across a lot of that. I'll come to that if we need it.
No problem.
Yeah, look, key thing is Te Papa is, and it's Museum of New Zealand with the Trao name there, and I believe we have the Trao name first, but Museum of Southland gives an ownership using the word of, and I believe that's critical. And also looking at the Te Papa design is that I think we move as quick as we can to create a brand, a logo, whatever you like to call it, something that we can use both in comms and marketing and everything. I don't know whether that's, I talked to Grant about it. He wasn't aware that anything was underway, but it's one of these things you've got to get it right first time. And obviously in 1998, Te Papa I don't know how much this cost, but I think it was a few dollars to get a thumbprint. But it's really important. I believe it will give the whole project some real identity. Once we, you know, I mean, we even wear the T-shirt if we can get something done like this. Yeah. So that's, I mean, I'm all keen on the Museum of Southland, but I'm also very keen that we move on a brand, on a logo, on a whatever you call it.
Sure. Leslie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am of the contrary opinion. I actually prefer 4B Te Anua Southland Museum, largely because it is my belief that the "of" will be dropped almost immediately and people will defer to it being Te Anua Southland Museum, and I can't see why we would add in the extra word just for it to be popularly dropped from then onwards. So my preference is the simpler form of 4B, and I'm happy to move that way when the discussion gets to that point.
Yeah. Tom.
I'm sorry, actually Evelyn's her hand up for ages, so you might take Evelyn.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, tēnā koe. Thank you, Tom, for your courtesy. My Runaka supported Museum of Southland once we were asked to input into that option as well. So not that it carries any more weight than anybody else, but we did quite like the rhythm of it. However, democracy will prevail. The thing that we are happiest about is that we seem to have come to a place where Te Inua is no longer the target, and we're now looking at what the English version is and deciding on that. So with that in mind, I'm not uncomfortable with Councillor Soper's opinion, but representing our opinion, it was Museum of Southland. Kia ora.
Tom.
Interesting that Evelyn brought up the question of rhythm of the name, because I actually also support Museum of Southland, because actually grammatically it means Te Anua Museum of Southland would be a single name rather than two separate names, wouldn't it? Because grammatically it actually forms a set, whereas Te Anua Southland Museum is clearly two separate things. So I favour A.
Yep. Trish.
I think it's just, you know, your personal preference. I find the rhythm of Te Anua Southland Museum is one line, which is contrary to what Tom says and contrary to what Evelyn says. So I'm happy either way, but I prefer option B.
You're doing the cha-cha and I'm doing the
Barry.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll make this out very unpopular again. I'm going to go for B, but I think it should be Southland Museum first. I've stated that many times.
Yep. Alan, I'll come to your team in a minute, Lee.
I support A. I think Te Anua Museum of Southland. I think that means that the Te Reo name will be used more often. I think because it's
Yep.
you know, it's a name. It's a Museum of Southland, so a bit like Te Papa.
Yep.
Because we don't. When you talk about Te Papa, you don't say Te Papa Museum of New Zealand. You don't say that. So it's called Te Papa, and I think Te Anua will be eventually what's used.
Yep.
Totally.
We'll transgress there. Before I come to your team, Lee, no secret that I have had some opposition to some of the wording in the past about English first or Te Reo first. I quite like the option A. It does flow. The other issue for me is the Museum of Southland implies it is a Museum of Southland as opposed to a Southland Museum, because Southland Museum implies that Southland are actually running the museum, and definitely they are not doing that. This is definitely a city museum run on behalf of the wider Southland group. So I prefer A, and I really like our ability to be able to, as you say, Rangi, run with the branding of it, because I think the branding will really pick up. But the important thing is to also know what the total name means, and the fact that the museum word is in there, it just tells people it's a museum, and then you use the other Te Reo part to do your branding, and I'm quite in favour of that. Peter.
Yeah, whichever way we go, I believe that most people in the future will probably just refer to it as a Southland Museum. I believe the tuna will be possibly there, but won't be used. So I believe that the Southern Museum was what people will refer to the museum as. So I go along with Barry.
Yep, it's okay. And I think when I look at, I did a survey last week of what the government agencies do, driven on the advice from Te Puni Kōkiri, and it's all over the place. Like the police have a double barrel name, but it's always police. MSD is the same, even though they have terrio names, but then the others the other way around. And I think if I look at the formal paper that comes out of the National Museum, it does say the National Museum of New Zealand, and then it says Te Papa underneath. But having said that, everybody's gravitated towards Te Papa because they've done some really clever marketing. And so the whole idea of a double barrel name is one, marketing, but as long as you know what the building you're marketing actually is, which is a museum, then you've got a double barrel win. So your team's chance for some input if you want to, Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to open the floor up to Ro to maybe just talk a little bit about how we got there from a designer's point of view.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, I think in the brief that we received as a design team, the notion of the Te Unua was quite compelling, and as the council will know, a big part of our design response has been responding to the geography of Southland, including the Antarctic Islands and Rakiura, and we felt that to create a design which honoured that name and the partnership that's embedded in that name was actually a really important thing to do, to bring the community together and also to remember that all of the arrivals to this particular area, and people keep arriving. It's not just a historical construct; it's a continual place of arrival. So, just on behalf of the design team, we were very pleased to have the notion of Te Unua embedded in the brief, and to respond as we have. And so far, it appears that the design has had some reasonable level of support for the people who've seen it, and that's always encouraging for us as a design team. Thank you. Sure.
So, Ria.
I do like both names. I'm really pleased that while I've been away, that there has been a talk piece happened between the council and Te Unua is sitting there. It flows off my tongue naturally, option B, but I see the significance of saying Te Unua, Museum of Southland. I do see that as being more significant than option B, so in that context I'd be going for A.
Sure. Tanya.
I actually total Ria because, Southland Museum did flow off my tongue as well. But I think when I look at it as a whole, Museum of Southland sort of sticks out comfortably for me, and I'm really wrapped we had to moving forward.
Yep. Tom, and then I go to Darren. He's the last.
Look, at the risk of maybe looks of horror from Panya or Evelyn and maybe others. I mean, do we need two names in the sense that we've got a hyphen, but not a hyphen, we've got a, whatever you call that, vertical line. I mean, can we not simply call it Te Unua Museum of Southland? Can it not just be a single name? I mean, or does that actually kind of bastardise the language too much? I mean,
can I just speak on that specific thing?
Yep.
Your worship, thank you. I think we're getting way too far ahead of ourselves when we're considering things like that there, Tom. And the reason I say that is because it will all depend on how the brand application comes out. So much like you've got Te Papa Museum of New Zealand, it'll depend on different brand applications as to which leads for what application. But for the majority, I think you're quite right. It could be a comma in some cases, or it could be a dash in some cases, or in some applications it may just be the standalone Te Unua on its own. So I think, I don't want to get into semantics.
Having a single name sounds better than having a name in one side and a name in the other side.
Yeah.
Before I give you the last word, Darren. Before I give Steve the second to last.
There's been so much good stuff said. I smile because it's democracy, right? We've all got a different opinion. I think the rhythm, I like simple, bold, clear when it comes to marketing, and you're right, marketing is going to be so key to this. So I go for option B, Te Unua Southern Museum, with the hope, opposing or different to Peter, that with the hope that people would use Te Unua. Simple.
Right.
Te Pai, Te Papa, Turanga, Christchurch.
Darren.
To show how the process works, I came along here with an opinion and have changed it. So,
yeah.
Me too.
I'm in the meeting today. I was supportive of option B because it was concise. It also reflected the previous name. It wasn't the Museum and Art Gallery of Southland. It was the South Museum and Art Gallery. Then I heard what Wahopai's like. Okay, I'll go with that. I'm happy to hear their voice.
So back to your team, and just a brief question on the naming. So if we went with option A, I personally would like that to be one name, that line, not to have a differentiation, which sort of implies, given that the names that we're using, the Te Reo names we're using are metaphoric. So they're not a statement that says, in Te Reo, this is a museum or a Southland museum. It's something completely different around the double hulled Waka. I'll come back to you. So I'd be interested to know whether your view of that would be that we just have a single line which says Te Anua, Museum of Southland.
I defer to our reps, Evelyn and Tania, as to their view on it. I'm agnostic on Te Unua is obviously very important to the name.
Yeah.
I'm agnostic on the A and the B.
Yeah. Alex?
Thank you, Your Worship. Respectfully, I would like to request that we leave this to the experts when it comes to brand application and marketing. I would soon rather see us, and much what Councillor Pottinger has said, to get the ball rolling on what the brand application will look like, so we can see it and then make that decision there. We don't know what we're voting on. You don't want to hamstring the designers when it comes to how they have to form the identity for this project by saying it must all be in one line. Like, I think we should leave it up to them.
Didn't suggest that. What I was saying is that the name could just be the name could be the five, if you're looking at A, the 5 words are actually in there. There's no slash mark in between that differentiates between Te Reo and English. You just have the one brand. If it's shortened down for marketing purposes, that's great, because a lot of places do exactly that. They take a shortened version that means it's much better to market.
I think we're getting stuck on semantics of there being a dash in between it. Yep. I think that's just to show a differentiation between the two names. It's not saying that it's actually going to have a big slash in between it when it comes to design application.
Trish.
I think we just need to make a decision between A and B. Good idea. And then leave it at that. We choose either Museum of Southland, Arts of Te Unua, or Southland Museum, and then let them do their thing.
Correct.
Yeah. So moved.
Sorry, through your chair, could we hear actually, Panya and Evelyn's view of actually having the single row of words, because there is a mixture there which I actually quite like, but it might be offensive, I don't know. I personally don't think brand experts should be deciding the name of the museum. That's the tail wagging the dog, in my view. I think you get a name and let brand experts, because we're not marketing Coke. We're not going to market this museum. I was thinking that sense, but I'd be really interested in Evelyn and Panya's view.
Well, if you'd like my view, I like Te Unua there, and I would like Museum of Southland underneath. That's how I would present it.
So, Your Worship, could we perhaps move on the discussion by actually moving for A or B at this stage?
Yeah, I'm just going to allow another couple of quick discussions. Rangi, I've got you, Michael.
Look, going back to the Te Papa one again, now no one has spent more time and money than doing a name than our Museum of New Zealand. They've separated the Te Reo name and the Museum of New Zealand by using a different shade of font. They've split it up. They've made it work. And again, I reiterate, using the word of gives ownership. And now if you if you apply the English language to it, that's what it means. Museum of Southland. And if you use Southland Museum, sorry, I reckon it cheapens the brand.
Yep.
So I'm actually with Alex. I actually would have sooner this been brought to us in imagery with options, like something like that. We would have gone, oh yeah, Southland Museum, something, and put together, yeah, like all these different things, and then we would have chosen that. So anyway, we're doing it this way, but this is important we get it right, because I'll tell you what, we're going to live with this, and we only got one chance.
Yep. Evelyn, followed by Michael, followed by Lee.
Kia ora. So, whilst my runaka suggested, when we were asked to input into the English version as well as the Te Reo version, Museum of Southland, because that's out comfortably with us, I don't think that we're wanting to dictate how the branding goes. If that is the name that is chosen, I think the branding will follow. That's my opinion. And as for I remember when Te Papa Tongarewa, National Museum of New Zealand, was open with much flourish and ceremony. It so quickly became just Te Papa that most people don't actually remember that Tongarewa. And I think it's got our place as well. People liked the crispness, the imagery. Well, a lot of people did, most people did. I think that our public will choose how they feel comfortable using the name in the process, but a lot of it will depend on what follows after this decision in terms of how the marketing brand names, which I'm not really into, but how that all follows. And we will have some input onto, our equivalent of the fingerprint. That will be where we get to say, this is what we prefer about this, or this is what we prefer about that. And if that means that things are not quite what we individually envisage, that's not really the point. I'm not a creative digital artist or anything like that. As long as it's consistent with the story that we are telling, that will be what people will look to. And so for me, I encourage you, because we don't get a vote, I encourage you to make a decision that what our personal preference is irrelevant. This is the decision for the community, and then we'll go with it and support it, even if it's not our personal preference, because that's democracy.
Just before I come to you, Lee, I guess the branding will be the issue. I suspect when the National Museum opened, I suspect the branding wasn't initially Te Papa. It evolved over time, and people now know it as Te Papa and don't know it as anything else, including the wider name that Evelyn said, which I've had a look at recently, which is a bit more of a tongue twister. And I think that'll happen with us as well. Our Te Reo name will evolve over time, but as an interim step, you still want people to know it's a museum. So you wanted to have some input.
Yeah, I think from the project's point of view.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, from the project's point of view, obviously, we needed a name. We needed a name to build our experience off, to build our branding off, and to complement the design work that the design team have done so well. So for us, it's about council making a decision on a name. And let us bring back branding options and how we display that name. But we need the first step, which is a decision on a name.
Yep. And I guess just as a reflection of that, we've been a long time getting this name, by my assessment, at least 9 months. And so it's important for us going forward, as certainly as we go to the community funders, which are not the big stakeholders, but the other organisations around town that might want to, having that brand is going to be really important. Michael, for the final word.
Thank you, through yourself, Mayor Clark. Look, I'd just like to highlight, especially what Lee's just highlighted to you as well, is once we've got the name, then we can actually do the branding. We couldn't do the branding without a name because it would have kind of been pointless. But having said that, also my apologies in relation to putting the dashes before in the names. It was just to separate them. Sorry, that is not intended. The dashes shouldn't be there.
Oh, it's 30 minutes.
They are one line. So our apologies on that front. We will drop the dashes, but that will come through in the branding from that perspective.
Thank you.
And the last one is, I just wanted to highlight that all four Runako and Runanga supported option A in relation either verbally or written, coming back to myself. Okay.
Yeah.
The very last one.
Thank you, Your Worship. So in the interests of the community and having heard all the debate, I would like to move that we go for option 4A.
I'm more than happy to second.
A second to Tom, I've got that. And just in light of what Michael said about the four Runako, we need to be cognizant of that, given they don't have a vote on this issue.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, 4A it is. We'll come back to some of the other issues later on for you, Lee. All those in favour?
Aye. Aye.
Anybody opposed? Unanimous. Oh, sorry, Barry, you are. Thank you. Yep.
Would you like that recorded, Councillor Stewart?
Yep.
And I sat on the fence.
So you abstain.
By both sides.
Okay, Peter.
You're
Fine.
abstaining.
Yep. And the rest are in favour, Lee.
That's nice.
Can I just jump in for a minute, just to reassure everyone, because you see so much passion around the branding. That would timeline roughly for that, Lee. We're sort of a little way away from that, aren't we?
Yeah, look, I think we need to get through that next stage of design,
Yeah.
Have the concept of the experience brought on board. So I'd like to think that early next year is probably an appropriate time to be sort of putting that work together.
Yeah.
I think if we try to do it this year, we might get it wrong.
Yeah, that's right. We have to have the experience evolve quite a bit. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. The floor is yours again, Lee.
Say again?
The floor is yours, isn't it?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Ro for making the trip and helping out with this. I'm going to relieve him of his duties so he can catch his plane. Cheers, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So unfortunately, you're just left with us two now. I would take the report as probably read and open the floor to questions on size, cost, and anything else that you'd like to talk to.
So I'll give you some input first into that. The size sits well within the bracket that we gave initially. Left open intentionally for that. $6 million up is not an inappropriate amount given how long ago we costed this, which from my memory is at least 2 years, maybe longer. And just for those who are listening and from the public, an increase in budget does not mean an increase in rates or potentially an increase in our debt levels in council either. We have other options available to us. Ringy.
Yeah, I'd like to just move the remaining three options.
I second it.
remaining three up there.
Come on, Ringy, you're only back 5 minutes.
I've read it all.
Yeah, I think it's very straightforward, and I don't think there's anyone in this room who would be against that.
Read it. All right, let's go for it. Get your time back.
Anybody else want to have any input before I put those motions?
No.
The recommendations? Okay, a mover and a seconder for the ones with the exception of the name, which we've already done. 1 through 3.
Councillor Pottinger and Councillor Bond.
Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. You've learnt a lesson here, Lee. Always come at the end of the meeting.
Well, I put it down to the quality of the report. It
was.
Was there a
High quality report.
But,
Well done, Lee.
but I'll take the win. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Well done. Very good.
On a serious note, it was really good.
Yeah.
It was an amazing
Quality of the
report.
project team.
Paki.
Yeah.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah,
And Grant. Well done, Grant.
Yes. Roll on.
We've done the major light items.
Yep. That was a government.
Move that we go into PE, Your Worship.
Thank you, Darren, and thank you, Leslie. We are now heading to PE.
Mr. Mayor,
You've been snubbed.
We've had
we finished,
feedback
okay.
from the public on the live stream that they can't read the screen behind us, so we need to give a summary of the reasons why we're moving into public.
Where are they?
We did the last item earlier.
So if all the minutes are
So as the mover,
negotiations.
we're going into public excluded to receive the minutes of the PE session of Great South Joint Shareholders, session of Council 18 July, session of Risk and Insurance 18 July, session of Infrastructure 1 August, session of Bluff Community Board 7 August, session of Community Wellbeing Committee 8 August, receiving minutes of the PX of Finance and Projects 15 August, Great South and NZ Space Ops Station Statement of Intent, and Great South 23-24 City Centre Activation Plan, Great South Constitutional Review, Saving Grace Funding Request, Southland Charitable Trust Charitable Hospital Funding Request, and the reasons are under 48(1)A, Section 72I for pretty much all of them, as outlined in the minutes.
And as the second,
Excellent.
I
So you're
agree
moving
with
them all
I agree with what has just been stated.
Would you repeat that, Leslie?
Enter into public excluded.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, Michael's got a comment. Is that before the live stream ends, Michael, or after?
Before.
Right, Mr. Mayor, Michael has a comment.
Michael has a comment before it closes.
Just before we go into public exclude, just the two Great South ones that were mentioned. The reason they're going into public exclude is commercial confidentiality, so we can have discussions about the content within those. The documents themselves for the statement of intent are already public. From that perspective, it's just so we can have discussions, and a bulk of that discussion will be released publicly immediately following the meeting with redactions, and intent is to get that out as soon as possible.
Okay.
You can end the live stream now.
Yeah, we can end the live stream now. As he does his